Another gorgeous afternoon in Daytona Beach, Florida, as we get ready to kick off the afternoon session of Daytona Preseason Thunder. Sprint Cup drivers readying themselves for what promises to be an exciting afternoon. Many drivers and teams have talked about finally getting together and putting that pack out onto the racetrack. We are about to see if that's going to happen as the cars are now rolling down pit road. Normally you would see one car go out, they would all stop on pit road, wait for the next to go. We're going to see if that's going to happen. Hello everyone, Rick Allen, Larry McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip with you once again. Now DW, it's 1 o'clock on a Friday. What as a driver are you thinking right now?
We're halfway there. Only got another day and a half to go. But no, I was in my coach, had on my scanner, and a voice, sounded like the voice of God, came down. Tell everybody I want to see pack racing in this session. So I think we're going to see pack racing because that voice wasn't just to me, it was to these guys in the garage.
The big heavy voice.
That's right. But it's going to be a fun afternoon.
Yeah. Well, we've been on the track now for 10 hours. And the majority, except for 4 Toyota drivers yesterday, we've been in single car runs. I think these drivers and their teams, they have to get out there and do some drafting with this new body. One reason I think as a crew chief, I might wean off of single car runs if we've seen a little bit of a change in weather. The weather is absolutely still gorgeous, but I'm looking at the flags and they look like a piece of plywood. That makes it a little tougher to A-B single car runs. So this may be a great afternoon to get out there and do some pack racing, a little drafting.
Now, one of the things that might make these drivers and teams think different is we had a little bit of an incident in our morning session. Earlier today, the 36 Tommy Baldwin Racing race car coming out of turn number 2, got sideways, slams into the outside wall, does damage to that right side. So Dave Blaney driving that race car brings it back into the garage. They look at it. Of course, we've talked extensively about the fact that the parts just aren't there right now as far as spare parts for these vehicles. So Tommy Baldwin Racing is going to end up having to go home. Their test cut short.
Yeah, I felt bad for Tommy Baldwin Racing. A single car, essentially, operation. I had talked to Tommy about 20 minutes before that incident. I said, Tommy, do you even consider doing any drafting? He said, Larry, no way. He said, we barely have one car finished, and there it is in the garage area, Matt. Already tore up. I'd say they're headed back to Mooresville, probably.
Absolutely, Larry Mack. They only had one car here, so their test is over. But this is Speedweeks twice on Thursday. We had 2 different opportunities for some small drafting sessions out on the racetrack. Much more anticipation to see more drafting during this afternoon session as the packs are on the racetrack. Robin Pemberton, VP of Competition. What are you hoping to learn from the teams during this drafting session today?
Well, when they get out there and run, I mean, the single car speeds, they are what they are. I think it's a little bit quicker than what we were last year. Yesterday we saw a little bit of drafting and the speeds didn't get up, you know, that high, 195 or something. So it really takes a number of cars. You needed 6 to 10 cars or something. So we'll see. You know, we're anticipating that to happen sometime this afternoon, and really it's about the team, more about the teams, to see how the cars are going to react in that type of situation while they are moving around.
With the old car, we were talking briefly about the number was about 206 you saw. What's your magical number with this car here this weekend?
Yeah, there's no magic. When we were at the 206 range down here last year, we went back and we took a little bit out of the plate, but we really went to work on the cooling systems. And we came back here with a different grill opening and configuration to do away or to limit the push drafting, and so we accomplished that. We've got that knowledge on how to do that and cut that down some. So there's not a magic number, there really isn't, but the cars are pretty stable. We're comfortable with a pretty good number up there on the board.
NASCAR, the fans, and the competitors, guys, excited to see these cars out pack racing here today, just to see what else we can learn with this new Gen 6 car.
I think broadcasters are excited too, because when the pack rolled out, we were all like, there they go,
Come on, let's talk about what we see on the screen here. These cars are all out there on the track. It's what we've been waiting for. One thing that the drivers, I heard them all complain a little bit about yesterday, was the gap. If you watch these guys, they're having trouble getting up to the rear bumper of the car in front of them. If you notice, these cars are almost equally spaced out. There's a gap in there that they're having trouble closing with the way this car is.
Now, is there an air cushion that gets created between these cars?
Well, last year there's what we would refer to as a bubble, a big bubble of air, and you could get in that bubble of air, and it was pretty big, and the car behind could get right up to the car in the front of it. This year the bubble's much smaller, and it's making it harder to get up to the back bumper of these things.
Yeah, this new Gen 6 body, this car, it pokes a smaller hole in the air than the old car, and I think that's another thing that has created the situation they're faced with.
Yeah, more air is coming off of this car. The spoiler is so much smaller, more air is coming over the car and hitting the car behind it now and creating this void.
On that lap right there, and they've only run 2 laps up to speed, but Jamie McMurray in the one fastest over 198 miles per hour.
Oh, they'll get over 200 when a group like this. It takes about 6 or 8 cars. We got plenty of cars here to get well over that 200 mark.
We got 15 cars in this pack, 16 cars if the straggler joins in. But right now, we haven't seen anyone really bumper to bumper yet. But as you mentioned, they do have that cushion around them that they're trying to maybe almost keep there to be a little bit safe early on in this pack run.
Yeah, some of it's intentional, but I also think some of it is just going to be this car not being able to close that little gap right there.
This is about 14 or 15 drivers, which honestly is about half of the field that we have here for the test session.
And guess what? It's half of the field, and the whole garage area is holding their breath right now because these cars, there's not a lot of them around. You don't want to tear one up.
And we saw that in the morning session with Tommy Baldwin Racing. When Blaney hits the wall, they had to close up shop because they don't have the parts to fix that car. Most of these teams are in that same situation. Even though there's multiple cars in a team, they don't have enough parts to repair these things to get back out there.
And when you're out there like this, you really, I mean, you're driving the car, but you get yourselves in precarious situations that you don't intend to that can end up leading to trouble.
That time by, saw speeds once again right around the 196 to 198 range.
You know, Darrell, one thing that I will be interesting to see if
clear mirror, side by side behind him there. We got 6 rows of 2x2 back there.
It's Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s radio.
TJ Majors talking to him.
Push on the 18 bottom down there. Next 2 cars are clear in your mirror. Side by side your mirror, runs bottom, runs on the bottom, 1 back, half back, with you, right with. No clear. Next 2 cars are clear in your mirror.
We talked
Still
about.
with you, he's back. 16's in your mirror there. I think he's back for that 13, trying to get a run there.
Air traffic controllers, these spotters are trying to figure out what their driver needs to make sure if they need to make a move, they can, but they know exactly what's happening around them.
Just think about yesterday when we looked at Jeff Gordon's car, all the mirrors that these guys have in their cars, and then the eyes of the spotter, the driver. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts when you're in a pack like this. Everybody's got to do their job and stay on their toes.
Bob, what's happening with the 24 team?
Well, you speak of Jeff Gordon, and yesterday he told us he wanted to get out in the draft. Well, guess what? He's been up on top of the rig with his crew chief, Alan Gustafson. He's just walked down. He watched the first few laps of this draft session, and that was a calculated move. They wanted to see firsthand what these cars were doing in the draft before they got out there. But Jeff Gordon heading over to his car right now. They are planning to get out in that draft just momentarily.
199.6 that time by.
Trevor Bayne.
Yeah, we had 6 drivers that lap that went over 199 miles per hour.
And guys, I'm seeing what I thought we would see. The driver that has the fastest speed is not the one that's running consistently in the pack. He's the one who gets a little bit of a run and slingshots by these guys.
Pardon the expression, but it's what we call the suck. Yep. You're getting the suck from the cars in front of you, and it's sucking you up and increasing your speed.
Darrell, what I was going to mention before we started listening to Dale Earnhardt Jr. in his radio communication was here a year ago, and even at Talladega, when a line would form in the second groove, it just, no matter how big it got, it just couldn't overtake the bottom line. We really hadn't had that yet. We had one starting to form, but it almost seems like the bottom is the way to go when you get a line of cars.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. I think the wake off these cars has something to do with it. But I'm not sure how that'll play out once we, get here and get serious. I just see these guys right now really minding their manners. Nobody's doing any erratic crazy moves.
What?
No, they are.
2 and 3 wide at Daytona, and we're testing, and you're saying they're minding their manners.
But they're not pushing each other. They're not running into each other. They're not trying to shove somebody past somebody. They're just kind of ebbing and flowing right now.
I tell you what else I noticed. One of the storylines from yesterday, we talked about it on Race Hub last night, was the fact, other than Marcus Ambrose and Eric Almirola, the Ford camp seemed to be searching for speed yesterday in single car runs. Right now, we have 8 Fords in the top 12. The drafts tends to be the equalizer.
Well, we saw that down here last year, Larry. The Fords didn't qualify. Well, they qualified well and raced pretty well, too. So we know they got the steam. They just really look like they got a good car in terms of race trim.
I would guess that Kyle Busch is going to have a little faster lap this time, as he was able to scoot out and have a big run here. Let's go back to the garage and Bob.
And here's what's really interesting. You're saying they're minding their P's and Q's right now, and I'm sure they're being very patient, very careful out on the racetrack. But listening to some of the radio communication of these teams and the drivers and the spotters, the drivers are saying that they're having a hard time pulling up right to the back bumper of the cars in front of them, and that they feel like just about a car length or a half a car length away from the car in front of them is actually a little bit quicker. So they're learning during this early draft session here at Daytona testing.
Yeah, it's not by coincidence that that gap stays about the same car to car to car. That's got to be that you just can't get any closer than that right now for whatever reason.
Yeah, actually just watching Martin Truex Jr. in that 56 car that's out front, he almost keeps searching which line does he want to get in front, the bottom line or the outside line.
McMurray had his hands full coming out of turn number 4 there. Fishtailed coming out of 4. Looks like he's checking off and dropping to the back. Take another look.
Well, I think this is what the guys are all trying to see when Jeff Gordon, yeah, you see right there, I mean, that car just about was out of here. I think that's what Jeff Gordon and some of them are watching. How is this car going to handle around other cars with such a small rear blade on it?
And it wasn't like Brad Keselowski in the 2 was pushing him.
Right.
He looked like there was a pretty good gap between he and McMurray in the 1.
That would have been front, gap in back.
That's push loose. You come through that corner and you start to push the nose a little bit and you put a little extra wheel in it, then it snaps. That gets you in big trouble.
And luckily he was able to catch it. We saw him put the hand out the window, letting everyone know, okay, I'm done. I'll check up and I'll go to the back.
Now, I will say this about this bunch of guys, these drivers. The longer they do this, the more comfortable they get and the more aggressive they will become.
Sure.
Once they realize, hey, I can go here, I can go there, I can side draft, I can bump draft. Once they get comfortable with this new car, they'll get a little more aggressive.
A few of them are having some impressive runs. Kyle Busch still out in front now. Last time by through turn 4, we saw a pack of 4 make a run. Take a look at the 78.
Whoa now.
Well, what happened there, I think Austin Dillon in the 33, the Cheerios car, he just had left pit road and was trying to get with this pack, and they were so much faster than him, he was just getting up to speed.
I rode around the track yesterday afternoon on the golf cart looking the track over, and the track is immaculate, don't get me wrong, but there is a line, kind of a little groove right through the middle of 3 and 4, like a separation, a tad of the...
Almost like a seam?
Like a seam. And I thought when I saw that, I said, you know, you hit that at the right, with that right angle, it could cause your car to get a little loose or get a little pushy. So there could be a small issue in turn 3 and 4.
A little unbalanced potentially in what we're watching right now. They're going through 3 and 4.
See, Jeff Gordon in the 24, we just got the report on him. He wanted to watch. Now he's in his race car and actually blended in nicely with this pack of cars.
It was funny, last night I was able to be involved with a Fan Fest program where we had probably 25 or 30 drivers come up and talk to the crowd, and to a man, they all said, we want to get out there with other cars. We want to be out there and get a feel for what this is going to be like around other cars. Well, there's a pretty good sized pack that's learning right now.
Yeah, you have, as dangerous as this may seem, or as much as we don't want to see anything happen to these cars, you have to do this. It's a part of testing. It's a part of the learning. The teams are getting data right now off of what the cars are doing with other cars around them. This is critical in preparing for the Daytona 500.
The other thing, and Darrell mentioned this yesterday, we're about 11, 12, some drivers 13 laps in this run. I think a good run would maybe be around 20 laps. That's about a half of a fuel run, 20 laps on the tires. You're starting to gain a little front nose weight by the fuel burning off, and the back of the car is starting to come up. I think 20 laps is a good run as far as a race run in the draft.
Well, I've mentioned this down here before, but the guys all say that when somebody is tucked up under you down the back straightaway, that car is harder to drive going down the straightaway than it is in the corner. The cars sink into the track in the corner, and they got a lot of grip, but they're licensed. The back end does come up a little bit, and the car's a little bit free going in a straight line. Somebody starts moving around your back bumper, it really upsets the car.
Exactly what Jamie McMurray is explaining right now to his crew. I think something upset my car coming out of turn 4.
Well, yeah, and he probably just got off the oxygen mask, too.
He definitely had to use his hands. I don't think he could verbally describe what all went on out there coming off turn 4.
We have the pictures. We can help him.
That's right. 2 by 2 once again as the pack works its way around this 2.5-mile super speedway.
Now look at Kyle Busch in the 18, the yellow car at the back. He was at the front of this pack. I think he purposely worked his way back there, Darrell, where maybe he can see, can I try to work my way back up through there?
Again, Larry, it's accumulating data. It's telling the team, it's easy. If you go out there and just lead everybody around here for the whole practice, what have you learned? Nothing. But if you get in traffic, get back there, try to work your way back to the front, you're going to find out what your car is like in every situation, and that's what you need to know.
Paul Menard, Kurt Busch joining this group now. They're the two on the inside of this pack, trying to stay up to speed with the group. This is
I tell you, this is very organized. I know folks at home probably think, well, they're just doing this on purpose. No, these guys are running flat out, but they're just learning about these cars and being pretty cautious about it.
Yeah, I mean, we're 15, 16 laps into it, still well over 196, 197 miles per hour.
Let's find out what that ride was like from Jamie McMurray. He's down with Bob.
Well, we saw Jamie McMurray climb out of the car.
Problems on the racetrack. Yep, Greg Biffle sideways. As he came out of turn number 4, he straightens it out, brings it onto pit road, and it looks as though we're going to go to caution on the racetrack.
I think he has a right front tire that looks soft. I'm not sure if it may just be from locking it up and sliding. It probably is, but he did exactly what McMurray did. His car got pushy loose right there, and it snapped on him.
Yeah, definitely a right front tire low for Biffle as he pulls it into the garage.
Nice save.
Yeah, take another look.
Yeah, you see he was down under the 18. The car starts up the hill. He puts a little extra wheel in it, and when he does, the back snaps around.
Darrell, I'm quite amazed he was able to drive out of that. I mean, that car was sideways.
What do we always say about him? He's a wheel man.
Yes, he is.
Take one more look at Biffle's wild ride here.
Poor Joey Logano in that 22 wonders what in the world is going on.
How did that happen beside me?
That's a funny way to pit.
All right, let's get back to Bob Dillner, who's standing by with Jamie.
Well, Jamie McMurray was just telling me it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, because these cars are dancing all over the place. Let's get back to your incident. I saw you use a lot of hand language in describing what happened to you with Juan Pablo Montoya, your teammate. What were you telling him?
Well, we were just talking about if the car's draft different than what we had last year. It doesn't really seem like pushing makes a big of a difference. He can get a really big run on a guy, but the cars seem to stall out quicker. So when you get the run, you have to make the commitment to either go to pass them, because it doesn't seem to benefit you to push them. And I thought my car drove really well. It's just when I got in an odd situation and I got really loose out there. But after watching Greg's, mine looked like child's play. So really nothing to talk about now.
How crazy is the draft, and how much are you having to relearn how to drive these cars in the draft?
Well, it's hard when, I don't know if it's for everybody. For me, when you come back to Daytona or even Talladega, the second race, when you haven't drafted in a while and you go out and do it the first time, it seems crazy, and then it gets easier. The cars are, it's a little bit different. I don't know if they're harder to see out of, but it's different because just the way the windows are shaped. So it takes a little bit to get used to that. But overall, I mean, it was actually pretty fun. The cars are pretty hard to drive, and I know that's what they want. I think the part that we have to figure out is there really wasn't a car close to me, and I got loose, and so we have to work on what we need to do to make the car better in traffic.
Drafting 101 here at Daytona, guys.
Thanks, Bob. And a great statement right there by Jamie McMurray. Here we've seen a day and a half of single car runs, and now Jamie McMurray says we got to figure out how to make this handle better in traffic. And I'm sure Greg Biffle is saying the exact same thing to his team. Let's figure out how to make this thing handle better in traffic.
Welcome back, everyone, to Preseason Thunder from Daytona. Whether it is in the race or in practice, if you're in the draft at Daytona, anything can and will happen. Just ask driver number 16, Greg Biffle, as he debriefs with some other racers down in the garage area. He took a wild ride, and now we are back to single car runs as we see Danica Patrick out there. We had speeds approaching 200 miles per hour, to be exact, 199.65 for Trevor Bayne while we were in the draft. But now, as we take a look from our infield studio out on the racetrack, there is a lot of what-ifing going on in the garage area right now. Matt Clark, Jeff Hammond, we knew something was going to happen out there. First, we saw Jamie McMurray just get a little squirrely. He was okay. But then Greg Biffle took the real wild ride.
Yeah, he really did, and he did a great job. We talked about that. He did a great job being able to save that race car. But I think it's also a little bit of a testament of the new car, because these cars have got extremely flat sides on them. So when the car did step out, it got a lot of air on the right side of that car, and I think that really assisted him. I'll be interested to be able to find out exactly what Greg felt when the car did step out. But take a quick look here. We've had two close calls in this first big pack drafting session right here. This is the first one here. You see the 33 trying to get into the fray right there. And that's Austin Dillon. Couldn't get in quite yet. And all of a sudden, here, Jamie McMurray's car, he gets extremely loose. He does a great job of saving it. Nobody getting into him. He's telling his crew and debriefing back in the garage yard, JR. But here's the big one.
Here comes Greg Biffle. Now, we talked about these packs and the cars looking stable. Did not look stable there.
Well, no, he wasn't stable there. But overall, I didn't think the cars were that nervous. This second look right there as he exited turn 4, the car just stepped out. I almost wonder if where he was in position with the 18 car of Kyle Busch, they were almost side by side, like his car came up and maybe took some air off that rear spoiler. That's when it really stepped out and got sideways with him. So you wonder if that's going to be part of it. And Darrell and Larry have already kind of addressed this. We're going to have to go back and address it with some mechanical grip to make the cars feel better in the draft.
Well, let's find out what it was like from the driver's seat for Greg Biffle. He's with Bob Dillner.
All right, Greg Biffle, was that a wake up and smell the coffee type of moment?
Yeah, I think it was. I'd like to say I had a lot to do with that as a driver, saving that thing. But I'll tell you what, I was running up front, and it wasn't that bad, or third, fourth. And I was following Junior, and he got real sideways and down on the apron coming off, and I was super loose too on corner exit. And so I was going to pull out of the pack and get to the back and see if the car was aero tight, behind all the traffic. And it must just be buffeting the air off the back of the car, completely. The spoiler's pretty short. But the thing spun out by itself off of 4. No one around it. Kyle was above me, but not close enough to make a difference. But tell you what, it was pretty surprising on my part that thing took off like that. It had been loose, but I wouldn't have thought back there with nobody around it'd be like that. But got a little work to do, I'd say.
How different is the draft?
It's way different, yeah. One thing I noticed too, it's really hard to push, which could be a good thing. I pushed the 13 car and he was just all over the place. I couldn't push him straight. Seemed like it lifted him up or it wasn't pushing him straight. And Jamie pushed me some, and my car was the same way. So that's definitely changed as well.
So now that you've caught your breath, are you going to go back out there and do some more drafting?
Yeah, we're going to change a few things in the back of the car. And, I debriefed a little bit with my teammate Ricky, and his car's a little bit different rear suspension than mine. So he said he was loose in but tight off. So we're going to kind of go to the combination middle point and see if it's better.
Bottom line, make it a little bit more stable for Greg Biffle, Matt.
Bob, former Daytona 500 champion Trevor Bayne was in the middle of all that drafting. So, looking at the video, it seemed like some guys were having trouble trying to suck up and get right up bumper to bumper with another car.
I think that was their instincts kicking in a little bit, because there were a few times where I had big runs and I could have got to their bumper, like the 5 cars in front of me. And when I got about a foot away, it was getting into turn 3, and I just knew if I got to his bumper all the way, I was going to turn him. I don't know what happened with the 16, but somebody's already turned around. And these things are a handful to drive. They're fun, but I don't know if we can make it that many miles in the 500. This thing was loose on entry, and then as soon as I get behind somebody, it gets tied off. So you definitely, you didn't want to be right on somebody pushing them, because as soon as it gets tight, you're just going to turn them. And, you got to use your brains a little bit more. And used to, we could hold it wide open and just steer out of it. Now you have to use your gas, your brake, your steering wheel. You got to use it all here.
so much data verbally that you're downloading to Donnie Wingo, your crew chief. You were talking to Marcos Ambrose. Feedback from him and also from you comparing the old car drafting with this car.
Well, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't only my car that was driving this way, that everybody else had a handful too. And I think for me, it's just less overall grip. You know, you don't have that wide open entry. I was having to lift to about 3/4 throttle, and I'm sure by the time we come back, we'll have that a little bit better. But I was definitely having to breathe the throttle, drag a little bit of brake. On exit, a couple times I had to lift. The 22 was behind me, kind of pulled to the left, and I don't know if it packed air or how it worked, but I took off really tight. So we held on to our Motorcraft Fusion, and luckily I didn't have to drop it off at Quick Lane for some new tires after flat spotting them coming in, it seemed like. But you know, these things are, I think it's going to be good racing, and you won't, I definitely don't think you'll see the 2-car breakaway because you'll probably turn each other.
More drafting expected, or are you guys going to go back to single car runs?
I hope so. Donnie never lets me, and after my feedback, he's probably not going to let me. You know, he thinks it's pretty sketchy out there, but I'll try to talk him into it because I love that stuff.
Just tell him it was smooth as glass, no issues whatsoever.
Perfect.
JR?
Yeah, there's always a difference in opinion between drivers and crew chiefs. But one thing we saw out there, and a word we keep hearing, is separation, Matt. It seems like the cars can't get as close as they want. And as soon as Greg Biffle went for a spin, we looked behind him to see how close that car was, because it can be a matter of separation. You can still get a guy loose in front of you.
And I think that's what they're gauging. I talked to crew chiefs all through the garage starting yesterday. They didn't know exactly what the Aero package was going to be, how close you can get. Can you get up on the bumper? Can you get to them but not by them? How far? What is that distance? And you're starting to see, we saw a little bit of it yesterday with the 4 cars, but now you're going to see more of it with all the cars on the track. And I think, Jeff, you know, that's going to be the gauge of what these Aero packages are doing.
Well, what I'm seeing here is we take a look at Joey Logano talking to his new teammate and our current champion, Brad Keselowski, after this race, or after this practice session that we went through as far as the drafting in a big pack. But JR, in my opinion, we talk about separation. I know back from my experience, we've run into times with different types of makes of cars that you don't have to be up on somebody's back bumper to make them get loose. You can get, you know, 7-8 foot behind them. You got that column of air you get into, and all of a sudden you can loosen somebody up. So I think what the whole big point of this practice session that we've all been pushing toward is these drivers, they don't know. Right. They've all agreed this is not the same car we had in 2012. It's a brand new feel, and what they're experiencing, you know, it might catch them by surprise. I think with Greg Biffle, he started going up the racetrack. He was trying to turn it down, and all of a sudden it snapped. And I've still got to believe that when he got to that certain point, that even the 18 had a little bit of influence. Y'all know it didn't, but he was right in an area, in my opinion, it could affect the Aero on it. Rob that air off of that 16 cars back in, and around he went. We're going to have to go back and address the mechanical grip. You can't do nothing aero-wise. You're going to have to work on getting that car hooked up through the chassis.
And just to reiterate, these guys aren't scared of drafting, neither the crew chiefs nor the drivers. They are just very cautious because they do not have backup cars. And if you wreck your car, you will be going home and end this testing session. Now, Brad Keselowski says drafting Daytona on speed now. Need we say more? BK, I don't think we do, but we have a lot to say throughout the rest of this program.
We're not done yet.
Welcome back. Preseason Thunder continues on speed. Ryan Newman making his way back out onto the racetrack. Single car runs once again here at Daytona International Speedway. We go back into the garage and Matt Yoakum.
Rick, some drivers watch that pack racing from behind the wheel. Jeff Burton on top of the hauler. So from your vantage point, what were you taking in, looking at all your competitors at different parts in the draft?
It looked like fun, but it looked like a lot of work too. So, you know, I think obviously with going this fast, you know, with this plate and with the short spoiler, they're going to drive bad. So, you know, I want to be out there with them because I think to learn to win a Daytona 500, you need to be running today. On the other hand, with the number of parts that we have, the parts and pieces that are available to us today, we can't afford to wreck a bunch of stuff. So, I think we're going to Paul and Austin are going to do some drafting, and the 29 and the 31 are just going to keep doing single car runs. We just can't afford to tear up a lot of stuff. So I did get to drive the cars at Talladega at the test. I was there for 2 days. We did a lot of drafting. But Talladega and Daytona are different. When they first paved Daytona, I think they were really, really similar, but the grip's coming out of this track. And on top of that, the short spoilers, these cars make a ton less downforce than the old car, they're going to be a handful. So we know that. The question is, what are we going to have to do to make them so they drive well and they can go fast?
And you look at the past history and the trends at Daytona, where you have the Rolex 24, and then as Speed Week progresses, the track seems to lose more and more grip, getting slipperier. What could you expect then with the Daytona 500 with the current package you have here?
Well, I think NASCAR might have to look at putting some more spoiler on it. We'll see. I mean, it's not my call. We'll see what they do. I'm not going to advocate or argue against it either for it or against it. But typically, this is ideal conditions. It's never going to get better than that. The only thing I will say is warmer than it normally is. So that's helping kind of to show what the problems are than if it was 60 degrees. So it's you're kind of juggling a little bit, but I kind of support them driving bad at Daytona. I don't think you can make one drive bad at Talladega, but at Daytona, because I just think it's fun. But this might be a little bit too much. We'll see what they decide.
Now, it's commonly known, if you follow Twitter, the franchise, Brandon McReynolds, working over in your late model program with your 12-year-old son, Harrison. What's an update on his racing calendar coming up?
Well, we'll start racing, and we raced some this fall. I think we ran 4 late model races this fall, and he sat on one pole and did really well. And we've been testing him all winter long, keep him in the car, and we'll race here in about 2 weeks down in Cordell, Georgia, and then we'll come down here and run the I don't even know what they call it, but it's 8 races and 9 nights over
the World Series.
Yeah, that'll be fun. So, for a 12-year-old to get 8 races and 9 nights will be really good for him. I hope we have enough equipment to run 8 races and 9 nights with a 12-year-old, but we'll bring enough parts to fix it, and he's really impressive. He's really fast. I've got my quarter midget guys working on the car, and Freddie Query's overseeing it. So Freddie's
a legend.
Yeah, he's one of my all-time heroes, and he's overseeing our program for me. And when I'm not around, coaching Harrison, and it's been really successful. Really, he's really my son's really fast. We just gotta learn how to race.
12 years old and already a little wheel man, Larry Mack.
Oh, I'm telling you, he will get up on that wheel, and I know they were testing this past weekend somewhere, and he actually spun the car out and hit the wall. But like Jeff and I were talking about yesterday morning, if you never step across the line, you'll never know where the line's at.
12's a little early to be doing that, but anyway, if it works for them, it works. A quick thought. Burton was talking about the track, the conditions, the spoiler. Always remember one thing. When we come back here, it will be after a 24-hour race has been run on this racetrack. Those cars leak oil and put rubber down on this track for 24 hours. This track will be a whole different animal when we come back down here for the 500.
So right now it's Jimmy Johnson out on the racetrack, single car run, but there are 7 in line on pit road waiting to go out as a pack. We'll be back for it. A lot of action continuing from Daytona International Speedway, but the test cut short for the 36 team of Tommy Baldwin Racing and Dave Blaney. They have loaded up that bent up race car, and they are on their way out of this racing facility. Take another look at what happened. We'll blur you at the beginning, but slides into turn 2, just coming out of turn 2 into the wall, and you see the damage to the right side of the car.
Yeah, the car just spun out. I mean, he was going through the corner. I'm thinking he hit oil, or something had to happen, because that car just spun out all at once.
Yeah, I think a couple of 3 drivers prior to that had actually, they came on the radio and talked about maybe something on the racetrack. Just think about it. We've already talked about these teams kind of being short on inventory right now. There's a Charlotte test next week. Heck, as we stand here, it's 44 days until the Daytona 500, which means the teams will have to be down here in just a little over 30 days for Speedweeks.
And Larry, explain a little bit. We keep mentioning guys are short on parts and inventory. These bodies aren't something that conventionally they would be able to just make in the shop. The guys, you'd have a guy hang a body at the shop, they'd make all of the pieces, but now these quarter panels are stamped and they have to be hung on the body, but the guys at the shop don't physically make them anymore.
Well, it's the good news, bad news. The good news is it's easy to duplicate and repeat race cars because they're not pieces that are fabricated and crafted by a fabricator. The bad news is because of this process, nobody's fault. Not NASCAR, not manufacturers, not teams. It's been a long work in progress getting where we're at today with this car. It's just got parts and pieces behind right now.
I just get the feeling that at some point, whatever you got on the car, just bring it on. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
If it got to push come to shove. I mean, these are legal parts as far as shape goes, configuration. They're just made out of materials that NASCAR would not normally approve, but they may have to.
So again, we've got a line of cars getting ready to go out in a pack to 14 plus 2. And when I say 14 plus 2, that's 14 that are in that pack you're looking at, and 2 are actually trying to catch that pack. So there's 16 out there trying to run in a pack, but 2 of them are a little bit behind, and we'll find out if they're actually able to catch up to that pack of 14.
But Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the 88 car, he turned off the banking coming off of turn 2 down the hill and really got a run onto the back straightaway.
Got a huge run coming off of that corner, but again, it's like he gets there and they hit a wall of air with the car in front of you and nowhere to go. The car just stalls out.
Still one more car out there and a gap there. Clear high behind him, clear high behind that 9 there. 51, 7, 33, 18 all back here, kind of spread out.
This is TJ Majors, his spotter we're listening to.
Still clear by 4, clear by 4. Outside, still rolling there. Those guys on the inside just kind of can't keep up. Inside, still inside. Still down there. On the line there. At your door, on the line. Still there, middle of the track.
So the pack continues to work their way around the 2.5-mile racetrack, and we were listening to TJ Majors talk to Dale Earnhardt Jr., and each driver and spotter have a different combination and a different agreement. Bob, what's going on with TJ and Dale?
Well, you hear TJ Majors up on top of the grandstands here, up on top of the towers, talking a lot like a play-by-play announcer, maybe coming after your job, Rick, but he's doing that because it's a directive from Dale Earnhardt Jr. Listening to them last year, at one point in the race, Dale Earnhardt Jr. had said, listen, TJ, I want you on the mic all the time. I want to know where the cars are, where I am, who is all around me, who's gaining, who I'm pulling from. I want you to be like a play-by-play announcer, and that's what TJ does for Dale Earnhardt Jr. Now, Darrell Waltrip, we know all drivers are different, but that's what Dale Earnhardt Jr. likes to hear on the restrictor plate racetracks about everything that's going on around him.
Yeah, I think it's so intense driving the race car. Your focus has to be not only what's in front of you, but what's behind you, what's beside you in the car itself. So when you have another set of eyes, it can give you a little bit of a comfort knowing that somebody else is watching out for you as well, so you don't make that bad move, so you don't pull down in front of somebody. It just really, every driver's different. I'm just like Dale Jr. was. Talk to me, man. Talk to me. Give me lap times. Give me all the information you can. It makes my job easier.
I enjoyed listening into the radio, and back in 2006, we were doing programs where we would focus on one team and follow them throughout the entire race. And I had the opportunity to be a part of the 88 team, or Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s team. And what I learned there is the first time I figured out that tandem racing was going to be around for quite some time, because Dale Earnhardt Jr. had worked his way all the way to the back of the pack. He had Jamie McMurray behind him, and he said, okay, here's the situation. The two of us are going to hook up and go all the way to the front. And they talked spotter back and forth that. Well, Jamie McMurray had the better car at the time, and so he got in front of Dale Jr., and as he was pulling away, Dale Jr. said, you've got to tell him to lay a little bit on the brakes so that we don't disconnect. We'll go faster that way. And all of a sudden, it's history. We see drivers going 2 by 2 all the way to the front of the pack. That may be done now with this new car.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But here's what's kind of deceiving if you're sitting at home watching this. It looks pretty easy.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It looks really easy. They're just out there going around and around and around, just holding it wide open. By the way, 200 miles an hour.
200, right at 199.65 miles per hour for Trevor Bayne.
Put it in perspective. You're inches apart, like you see, at 200 miles an hour going around a 2.5-mile racetrack. I mean, this is hard work. It takes a lot of mental, not so much physical, but a lot of mental preparation to do this.
You know what I've noticed here now, I was just talking earlier about the bottom of the racetrack, but Mark Martin in the 55 with his teammate Clint Boyer right behind him and a host of others, over the last 2 to 3 laps, they've been working the top of the racetrack, a very organized line, and obviously, because of how organized they are, you can see there, those 5 or 6 drivers on the bottom can't do anything with them.
You know which line will be the fastest?
The one with the most drivers?
The one with the fastest car in it. That's kind of how, I remember, think about Dale Jr. You know, we called him the Pied Piper for years. Whatever line he got in, that's the line everybody else got in. His dad was a lot the same way, because you know he's got a fast car. They got that instinct. They know when to go to that high line. They know when to go to that bottom line. There's an instinct that goes into driving on a track like this.
Instinct, and is it Dale Earnhardt Jr. asking TJ Majors to tell him exactly what's going on all around, also helping him figure out if TJ says, hey, the outside line's moving, does Dale Jr. say, okay, I need to get in that outside line?
TJ is telling him what's happening right now.
Right now.
No, but listen, Dale Jr. is anticipating what's going to happen based on what TJ is telling him. So it's a marriage. He's telling me where everything is right at this moment, and I got to think about what I'm going to do as we go forward.
Boy, what I just saw right there coming off too, Carl Edwards, it had to be the work of his spotter as well. He jumped from the bottom line to the top line, and there had to be not much more than the length of his race car to get in that. But now I'm seeing the bottom get a little bit of organized, and you can see, here they come. They're starting to make up ground on that outside line.
Yeah, I don't think at Daytona, I've never really felt like one line was maybe better than the other. It just really did depend on who was in which line.
Bob Dillner.
Greg Biffle has climbed back in his race car. He's going to go back out in the draft. Now, I spoke to his crew chief, Matt Pusha, and I said, what did you fix?
Whoa,
he says, well,
trouble on the back.
Trouble on the back once again. The
All
9
the
of Ambrose goes around, as does the 1. Jamie McMurray, our reigning champion. Brad Keselowski torn up. Regan Smith in the 51.
Both the
Kasey
Penske
Kahne's
cars.
involved.
24, we're done.
And Darrell, I don't know who it was, but somebody changed lines.
Yeah, I saw him
and
moving.
there wasn't a hole there.
I saw him moving back there. Somebody made a move, and there wasn't anywhere to go.
Joey Logano's in it. We're hearing Eric Almirola potentially in this as well. This pack was growing 15 to 16 cars, and most were involved in this.
But this is what? This is why. Okay, this is why we haven't been doing a lot of drafting. This is the fear you have. And why do we have that fear? Because we usually get a reality.
It could happen. It's always on the mind of the drivers and teams that this potentially could happen. Running at those speeds, just as you mentioned, DW, running at almost 200 miles an hour, inches apart. One person makes one little mistake, and this is the result.
What did I tell you when this session started? It's going to these guys get a little more comfortable. They get a little bit more aggressive. They start to make a little bit more move. They start trying to see where the car will fit into. Larry mentioned tight hole, but we got in there, and this is what you end up with.
Darrell, where do we normally see the big wreck at Daytona? Right there where it happened.
Coming off of turn 2.
Yeah, I'm still writing driver numbers down, and I'm already up to about 10 or 11.
Well, I think we said there were 19 cars in that pack, and I got to believe that about 15 of them were damaged.
And you know, old car, new car, whatever, that just simply was a misjudgment on some driver's part back there.
A lot of damaged vehicles making their way back into the garage. Regan Smith in the 51 makes the hard left turn. You see Jeff Gordon in the 24 team.
Yeah, Jeff's
pushing
got
that car in.
Fluid running out of his car.
We saw the 5 of Kasey Kahne also sliding through the grass. Marcus Ambrose out of his race car taking a look. Disappointment on the faces of all the drivers, as though although they were elated to be able to go out and run with other cars, this is the result of a mistake. There's Kasey Kahne's number 5. They're going to hook that back up to the tow truck and bring it back into the garage. The 14 of Tony Stewart looks like it got through unscathed. Biffle walking back to his hauler. Looks like the Stewart Haas 2 cars, the 14 and the 39, not involved.
Larry and I are busy trying to exactly figure out what happened. Let's
take a look here.
take a look at this and see if we can get an idea. You're going to see the 9 car come to the left.
They're right in that area right there.
Yeah, the 9 car is going to come to the left.
The second car in line.
And he's going to get, I think, pushed or tapped from behind. Let's roll it here and see. You're going to see the 9, and here he goes, but right there, he gets pushed into by...
That's Carl Edwards.
Carl Edwards,
the
99
car. Yeah.
And because Marcus Ambrose was second in line, everyone behind him after that happens either checking up or trying to figure out the line through, and that caught up almost everyone.
That was a... can we run that one right there? I think that told us more of a tale right there, what we just saw in that replay.
I think what I saw was when the 9 started to pull down, the 99 was going to go to the outside and fill the gap, and he clipped him as he goes by.
A little tighter view.
Wow, look at all these cars.
There's the 99. That could have been the 88 that was up there with Dale Jr.
I believe it was. They're all black primers for the
hard to tell. It's hard to tell.
We're going to take another look at that wider view of what took place there on the backstretch.
Yeah.
Here it is. That is Dale Earnhardt
Yeah,
Jr.
It is. And you see what happens. The 9 started to go to the inside, and Junior, I think, was going to go up the outside, and he clipped him in the right rear there and turned him. Yeah, it was Junior. It couldn't. The 99 and the 88, yep. They look exactly the same.
Car's getting caught up behind the 9 of Marcus Ambrose, sliding across the front.
I think what happened there is the 9 went down. Marcus went down to go to the inside, and Junior was going to run the outside and close the gap, and he just caught into the right rear of him.
Let's go to the garage and Matt Yoakum.
Rick, Eric Almirola has driven his wounded Ford back into the garage here. You've had a chance to look at the video. Walk us through what took place for you.
I had actually just gotten in the draft about 2 laps before that. We came in and made some adjustments on our Smithfield Ford Fusion, and it was a lot better. So I'm not sure. Marcos, I see my teammate there get hooked. I can't see who that was, but anyways, it's
looked like Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Yeah, it's just part of this kind of racing. We're out there in a big pack, and when something goes wrong at the front, we all end up in it. So maybe the bad luck's out of the way before we come back here for Speedweeks. You know, you never want to tear up race cars. That's no fun. But you know, the bright side is that the change we made was better, and hopefully we'll get this out of the way, and when we come back down here for Speedweeks, we won't be in that big one.
Now, the 36 team had an issue this morning. They loaded up and went home. They only had 1 car here. What's your situation?
I don't know. We get a ride from Roush, so I know the 99 was in the wreck as well, and our 2 cars were in the wreck. So I don't know if we'll go home or if we'll wait for the other Roush teams to finish testing. So we'll just have to see.
All right, thanks, Eric. Let's go across the garage area to Bob Dillner.
Well, the champ, Brad Keselowski, checking out his Twitter feed after that incident. First of all, what did you see?
I didn't see anything. I saw cars, you know, smoke and wrecking in front of me. I think I ran in the back of the 43, and somebody ran in the back of me, and it's just the way this deal is. So it's unfortunate, you know, but you know, sometimes you got to wreck them to learn. So,
what did you learn out there today with this new car in the draft?
Well, I think everyone's just the sport is rewinding. That's the important thing to say, because the sport advanced to where we got the 2-car tandem about 3 or 4 years ago. And there were certain things that you could do then that you could never do in the past without wrecking. Now the rules package has been changed back to where we were in the early 2000s, where I think the fans and everybody else enjoyed the racing a little better. And so as drivers, we have to rewind back to how we used to drive those cars. And this is how you do it. You know, you learn and you make mistakes, and that's part of it. But you know, I might be the guy that makes that mistake the next time, so I can't really be mad about it. But it's unfortunate there's torn up cars, but let's be honest, it's January. We got another month and a half to build them right, and I'm sure nobody in the field here is going to race these cars anyway. So we'll build another one and have the Miller Lite Ford. It's the first time I said that. Back
Good job.
For the 500.
Hey, Darrell Waltrip and Larry McReynolds, Rick Allen in the booth are noticing that you guys aren't pulled up to each other's back bumpers. Can you not do it, or is it just not the faster way?
Well, I mean, I think you can see from Dale you can do it, but we're all trying to learn the consequences, and nobody wants to be that guy. Unfortunately, somebody has to be that guy, and that's the way it is.
All
All right, Brad Keselowski, the champion. I want to look at his race car right here. You could see a significant amount of damage right here to the left rear quarter panel, in the front fender as well. And then if we swing over here to the right rear as well, you can see they have that 200-mile-an-hour duct tape already holding on the rear tailpiece and the rear quarter panel. But this car is toast. It's done. It's the only one that the 2 team has available to test down here. And you know what? They don't have another one in the shop that's completely done either. One in production, but it's still not done coming out of that shop there in North Carolina.
We're counting 10 cars involved in this, and we've got to remind you that there's testing now in the Sprint Cup Series. So this obviously a big situation here at Daytona, but how does it impact Charlotte and the test coming up? I mean, we've talked about very limited number of cars. You do something like this to a race car, how does that affect your year now?
Well, it's the workload. You know, they're not going to run these cars at Charlotte. They have their Charlotte cars, mile-and-a-half cars, so it's not anything like this car, I'm thinking. But it's the workload. This would have been a great car to run in the Unlimited. This would have been, yeah. But I was going to ask you, Larry, where was the 48 car in all that mess?
I can tell you where he was. He was about a half a lap behind them. Now you see him sitting in the garage area. Chad Knaus, I talked to him yesterday. I said, Chad, with this new body style, do you plan on doing any drafting? Because ever since we started back testing in January, Chad Knaus, Jimmy Johnson, they've never been in a draft. They, in fact, during Speedweeks the last 2 or 3 years, they've never been in a draft, and there she sits, pristine and clean, and ready to do a few more single car runs.
His crew back home, they don't have to build another car now because this one is still good.
Well, to me, the organizations that took a big hit there, Penske, 2 drivers, Richard Petty Motorsports, 2 drivers, and then Hendrick Motorsports with Jeff Gordon and Casey Kane, 2 drivers. So big hits, especially, I think, for Penske and Richard Petty Motorsports.
We don't know the extent of the damage to the 88 either, because obviously maybe a little front end damage, but probably not too much.
Nah, he's okay.
He was up in front of all of the melee that took place. And yeah, normally you'd watch backup cars get unloaded from the haulers.
They're not any in there. They can't unload there.
There isn't a backup car to go to. The big one happens in Daytona Preseason Thunder.
Marcus Ambrose will be in that Rolex race, but he is done driving for today. Frustration after a big wreck on the backstretch here at Daytona Preseason Thunder has cut this session short for several drivers. 10 in all. Jamie McMurray, your defending champion, Brad Keselowski, Kane Ambrose, Kyle Busch, Logano, Jeff Gordon, Eric Almirola, Regan Smith, and Carl Edwards were all involved in the crash. And we remind you, there are not backup cars involved in this test. So a lot of guys are done. Let's go to Bob Donor.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. also sort of involved in that incident, and this is a big learning experience, and I think that's one thing that everybody has to remember. But take me to that incident. What happened, Junior?
We were going around 1 and 2. I thought Marcus was backing up to me. He looked like he was laying off the leader a little bit and looking to get a run on the back straightaway. And we got off of 2 and was trying to push him a little bit, and had a hard time getting our bumpers kind of lining up. There's a roll bar on the front end of my car, and his car. That's the first time I pushed it forward, and his car set up on top of that roll bar. And then I was kind of, wheelbarrowing him around a little bit. And, we ended up getting him turned, I guess. So, I don't know. I was hoping I didn't start it, but I don't know if I did. Tore up a lot of cars, guys down here trying to work, and it's unfortunate. But pushed the Toyota pretty good, lined up well with the Chevy, and for whatever reason, our 2 cars just didn't really work together very well, but hopefully everybody's all right.
Is it back old school a little bit with the manufacturers that things work differently in the draft with the different makes?
You definitely got to be more careful pushing people. The cars are really tail happy and real loose because of downforce in half on the back of the cars, so they're a little bit more of a handful, especially in the draft, toward the back of the draft where the air's real dirty. And so you got to work on your car a little bit, I guess, to get it hooked up. You see a couple guys get real loose in the draft. So that's kind of good. I think that's, get the cars a handle and get some differences between certain people as far as how good cars handle and how bad they handle. So that'll make the racing a little bit better. And, I don't think we will be able to tandem unless we can, go back to the shop and work on the cars and get them to line up better.
What's the plan for the rest of the day and the test?
We're going back to single car runs. I don't think anybody wants any more drafting after that, so we'll just go back to run single car runs. We're probably going to be here till 5 o'clock tomorrow working on our cars. We got to find a little more speed.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Matt?
And catching up with Marcos Ambrose, driver of the 9 car. So if you had a chance to see what took place besides what you witnessed firsthand behind the wheel?
No, I haven't seen it yet, but it doesn't really matter. I just feel bad for my Stanley and Rich Petty Motorsports team. You know, it's just I got Junior pushing me. He's just a great drafter. Really can feel it well, and I guess you know, I just got caught on the edge of the bumper there, and just with the shaped noses and the tails, just spun me out. It was hardly even a bump. It was just enough at the wrong angle, wrong time, and just sent me for a spin. I feel bad for everybody because quite a few cars got torn up there, but we'll repair this one and probably build a couple of new ones and get ready for Speedweeks.
More of an incident of a typical drafting type deal with this, or was this more of related to the new cars, you know, being the Ford, the new Chevy?
Well, certainly we used to get greedy with the old cars. They were very easy to bump draft. You could really had a good square surface to push from. You could get across, you know, on an angle and still get away with it. So I guess, you know, we're used to that, and you know, I didn't think anything of it. I got a couple of shots from him down the backstretch, and we carried some steam, and you know, just the third shot just spun me out. So I definitely think it's a consequence of the new shape and lack of downforce. The car's very light and doesn't take much.
All right, thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Bob?
Casey King was just telling me it feels like 1 year ago, like we were racing down here because he was involved in a bunch of incidents. But first of all, you know what happened?
I couldn't really tell. I just saw a car kind of move back and forth and then come across the track, and I was in the inside lane and just hit the brakes, and I thought I was going to be all right, and then whoever was in front of me hit that car, and they all slowed up quick and then got hit from behind and got pretty tore up. It's too bad. We still had a day of testing to go, and we were making gains and things, but still we had a good day and a half, myself and the 24 team, and hopefully we'll be ready to come back.
Will you be comfortable now leaving here and coming back with what you learned and going racing again?
I will be. I'm, you know, I liked the drafting right there because you could get bursts of speed. You couldn't really push because as soon as you push the car in front of you, it starts moving around too much. I tried it once and then I just didn't do it anymore. But you can get, if you get close to the back of a car, you can give him a pretty good burst. And if there's an opening, he can, you know, pass a car too. So I kind of liked how it worked right there. It definitely wasn't single file. You can move around and race pretty good. So that was good.
You told me you were having flashbacks to 1 year ago, though.
Well, not necessarily flashbacks, but I've seen that stuff happen plenty of time on restrictor plate tracks. Half the time you don't know who it is, but today it's hard because everybody's in the same color of a car. You know, when we come back for the race, you'll have all the colors, so it'll be easy to tell what happened and who was involved.
Casey King done for the day, as many are after that big one during testing.
Yeah, Bob, it was a big one. Perhaps the word that Dale Jr. used, unfortunate, was the best one to describe it. There's the brain trust of Hendrick Motorsports, Chad Knaus, Alan Gustafson, and also Jeff Gordon, who was involved in that, talking about what happened to them. And, of course, Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson elected not to go out in that, and therefore they do not have a wrecked-up race car. But it is... For Jeff, you looked into this earlier today. You looked into the way these bumpers matched up, and as Dale Earnhardt Jr. told us just a moment ago, he said the Chevy and the Ford bumpers didn't match up very well.
Well, let's take a look at, like, let me see your phone right there. I want to show you something.
This one.
All right, these two are basically, let's call it the old car. Look, both of them are square. When they went together, the front and rear bumper, that's kind of like what they matched up as far as 2012. They could push one another. Now we've introduced this 2013 car. It's a little more round on the front versus that square bumper that we had before. So now, whenever they get together, NASCAR allowed the manufacturers to have a little bit more of a character look to it. So the Chevrolets have a little bit more of a point maybe than the Toyotas do versus the Fords. And the way the back bumpers are lined up now, all of a sudden, they don't have that flat surface that they had before. It's a little bit round here. So when you get into somebody, it's easier to loosen the car up. We already know that these cars are lighter on the back end. So when you get into one another, you miss a little bit. We've seen it even with the old cars. You can turn a guy. And I think coming off of turn 2, it's always tricky off that part of the racetrack anyway. Car kind of flattens out. And if you don't hit a guy perfectly square, you loosen him up, he breaks that traction, and you saw what happened. All of a sudden, it snapped around, and we've taken out, 10 race cars.
And, Matt, there might be people that just join us right now wondering, why are they not rolling out backup cars? Well, the truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter how big of a team you are, you don't have a backup.
And to your point, Jen, I'm glad you brought that up. There are cars that you hear drivers and crew chiefs saying, we have cars in production. You know what that means, Jeff?
They're not done yet.
They're not
done yet.
Now, they're parts and pieces. They're kind of assembled and ready to go, but for a few reasons. They're trying to get parts become available. Also, they're trying to get final rules packages from NASCAR as they work through this, too, to say, here's how we want these cars built and brought to the track. So it's intentional that they're not done because they're waiting to finish these cars.
And what we've been saying, we've been looking for data ever since we started this testing at Daytona. And that's part of the equation. We get ready to build these cars. We want all the data possible so that we build the car one more time and we build it right. So we take it to the wind tunnel and, hey, validate it, bring it back to the racetrack, we got a fast race car. So that's part of the reason why we've only got one car basically out of each one of these teams at the racetrack.
What happens, though, this wreck affects the planning that these guys had. I'll think of the 22 in particular. They had a scheduled motor change. And it was going to serve them for a lot of different reasons. Number one, they moved from Dodge to Ford. So the guys need to learn how to plumb their car, make an engine change at the track. It's also a good way for them to work together as a team to do a motor change. So this is just throwing a monkey wrench in a lot of the planning that crew chiefs had, to get the notes. It's also about data, but it's also about just getting your teams to click and to work right. So this wreck just halfway, at lunch, I ran into a couple guys who are like, all right, halfway mark. Well, you know what? This was the final mark for a lot of them.
Yeah, that was Darrell's thing when he first come on there. We're halfway there. But the thing is, JR, the best laid plans of mice and men sometimes go awry. That's what's happened down in this garage area. Right now, a lot of them are running around like a bunch of rats.
Exactly. And NASCAR told us before we came down here, a lot of the most of the competitors said they did a great job developing this car. But NASCAR did warn us that they have a lot to learn from this car. They're learning it right now. And there we see John Darby, Robin Pemberton, and Mike Helton talking about what they have seen so far. And they agree there is work to be done. But so far, so good, except for this situation with these wrecked up cars. That will probably do it for teams that can't afford to lose cars they don't have, says Denny Hamlin. He was doing a little bit of drafting yesterday and not with us now because he's home waiting for the birth of his daughter. Jimmy Johnson said looking to draft, but all of my friends are heading home now.
Sarcasm.
Jimmy Johnson, he might not have friends to go out and draft with. There's one of his friends, the car of Jeff Gordon, a little bit wrecked up. Much more to come on Preseason Thunder.
Daytona Preseason Thunder continues with just a few less cars.
Well, they say that your plan A is only as good as your plan B. Well, these guys don't have a plan B.
We actually we exhausted plan A for 10 race cars.
Yeah.
Involved in the big one here at Preseason Thunder testing, which we weren't expecting to see that. You wouldn't expect to see it.
Oh, yeah, we were.
But at the same time, we always knew that it was a possibility.
Yeah, we didn't expect to see that many cars, but we know, and particularly under the circumstances, when you put these new cars with this new configuration and a spoiler, and we've heard these guys talk about how the cars are a handful, we kind of had an inkling that maybe we're going to see some action. Maybe not quite that much, but some.
Well, we just saw Ryan Newman in the 39. Now, he was not in that pack. Neither was Danica Patrick.
Neither
but
was
Tony
the 48.
Stewart, he was in that pack, and he was at the back. But somehow he was able to get through there unscathed. But, Bob, I'm not sure we have completely spoke the truth about no backup cars.
Absolutely. Everybody's saying everybody that was involved in that incident is done for the day. Not so fast. Take a look at this. The 99 of Carl Edwards has some damage to that door area and also the rear quarter panel. Well, that car is toast. It's done. But guess what? This is the only team out of those that have wrecked that has a backup. And you can see the backup right there for Carl Edwards and Jimmy Fenning coming out of the rig and being lowered. They're going to take some parts and pieces to the primary car and apply them to the backup car, which is about to come to the garage area right now. So one guy is actually going to be able to continue his testing efforts that was involved in that big one here during Daytona testing.
That's Jimmy Fenning at his best right there. I mean, he didn't come down. He came down here with a backup car.
Prepared.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way he goes about his business.
Matt Kenseth back out on the racetrack in the Dollar General number 20.
You know, I go back to Casey Kane's interview a while ago with Bob, and something he said, we hate that we're going to lose the next day and a half of testing because we're looking for more speed, and we had a test plan. Well, the good news with the organization that big, they will benefit from what Dale Earnhardt Jr. learns over the next day and a half. They will benefit from what Jimmy Johnson learns. You look at Penske Racing and Richard Petty Motorsports. Now, Richard Petty Motorsports, they do have the resources around Fenway, but Penske, they're not going to learn anything else over the next day and a half.
One thing Dale Jr. learned, don't be pushing around on no Fords.
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the questions that we had coming into this. In their shops, they could go Chevy to Chevy and see, okay, lines up, yes. Toyota to Toyota, lines up, yes. Ford to Ford, yes. What about the different makes? How do they match up? We just found out that a Chevy pushing a Ford doesn't work out all that well. Matt Kenseth continuing around the racetrack. Matt's going to be a guest on the Race Hub this evening with Daniel Trotta and Steve Burns.
And catching up with the storyline we've been following, Rick, ever since we got here to Daytona International Speedway, and that's the parts situation. And now with this big crash we had, and Alba Colon, the program manager for Sprint Cup for Chevrolet, you've already called your parts person to find out where your supply sits at this juncture. So how are you sitting?
You bet, we already did that, and we are pretty good. The deal is, you know, the teams are working pretty much around the block. We are supplying parts around the block, shipping express air just to be sure everybody gets that. It's just put a little wrinkle in the deal, but trust me, we are working on already being sure that all of them get everything that they need.
All right, if there's one part of the car that you're behind on that you feel like you need to step up production even more now, what would that be?
Well, I would say the hoods. We are working on the hoods to be sure, you know, that they are the highest strength and everything that the teams need. And we keep working on that, and this will help us to prove how good we are with the part and what has to be done to improve it. And trust me, they're already working on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bob?
Alan Gustafson is the crew chief for Jeff Gordon. You're done for the day. How much does this put a wrinkle in your preparations for coming down here to Florida Speedway?
I think it's, I don't think our 500 cars are really going to sacrifice much, but this would have been our third car. You know, we really have to have 3 cars to come down here to start, right? You know, depending on how that goes, you may need more. So it just puts a bigger strain on the shop when we're already under a pretty big strain with having to build all these new Gen 6 cars. And really, we just got the deck lid on this car Wednesday afternoon. So, I mean, I think it left the shop Wednesday at 4 o'clock. So parts really haven't been available. It's just been hard to get ahead. So it'll make a little bit more of the strain, but, you know, that's part of this business. It's, you know, at the end of the day, when you race, for as long as we race through the season, endurance comes in 2 factors. So we're strong enough to overcome it, and the guys will work hard and get it done, but it won't be easy.
The car that was wrecked here was planning to be your shootout car. Now, is that 500 car produced and done in the shop, or is it still in the assembly line?
It's still in the assembly phase. When I left, the body was getting hung on it, and you know, that's by design. You want to learn as much as you can before you get those cars into final production, so you can implement everything that you know up to this point. So that's not unusual. It's just usually we'd be in a lot better shape for Phoenix and Vegas and those races down the road, where this is a little bit easier to absorb. In this situation, you know, those races, we can't sacrifice anything there, so it just gets, you know, you start losing days, the calendar starts shrinking, it gets a little tougher.
Gonna have to make some 24-hour shifts, Jeff Hammond.
That's right, Bob, and that's one of the biggest things a lot of these race teams do not have is the luxury of trying to find days when you're wanting to get prepared for the upcoming season. And it's so important that you come out of the box prepared and ready to go racing, whether it's at Daytona or the following week at Phoenix on into Las Vegas. All of this could come back to haunt you. And this one crash early in the season, again, it will show how prepared you have as far as the right people in the right place to get it done. These cars will be able to be rebuilt, but somebody will have to give up a Saturday or a Sunday or a Sunday night to get caught up. And, hey, Larry Mack, right quick, I thought I heard you say something about the Penske organization suffering as far as not being able to get some information. I think that, you know, even though it's going to be hurting them, you know, the good thing is since switching over to Ford, they'll have that Ford manufacturer representative helping them with some information that maybe they couldn't get if they were still with Dodge.
Oh, they're going to be better off than if they were in the Dodge camp, because they were in that camp completely by themselves. I know they're getting their engines from Roush Yates engines. I just don't know how much car information is truly being shared in that camp. I mean, I look over at the Chevrolet camp. I don't think there's any information other than maybe some engine stuff that's truly shared, like between Hendrick Motorsports and Richard Childress Racing.
If they were still with Dodge, they'd have plenty of parts. Because there wasn't but two.
They might have a backup car.
They had a backup car down here earlier this year.
The other thing that Brad had mentioned is we can learn from this, and we heard Alba just talking about from Chevrolet saying we're going to learn as far as how our parts handled all of the melee that took place and learn from that and go back and try to make better parts even.
I would say there's a lot of lessons that was learned, a very expensive lesson, but a lot of lessons learned.
Alba's, I heard she was an engineer, rookie engineer back when I drove for Chevrolet.
Trevor Bayne fastest in the pack. Might not see that again this afternoon. Trevor Bayne, Wood's brother, Ford Fusion, back out on the racetrack. Daytona Preseason Thunder continuing here on Speed. This is day 2, the second afternoon session. To start off this session, we had a large pack of cars go out there, and at that time, Trevor Bayne was able to turn the fastest lap, 199.65 miles per hour, around this 2.5-mile super speedway. Everyone went in, collected some data, and came back out for the second large pack run, where we saw 15 to 19 cars running in that pack, and that's where we had the big one happen. 10 cars got involved.
I was looking at some of these cars to see if there was any distortion. A lot of times you get out here to Daytona, you'll see the hoods caving in and areas of the car that need support with some of the parts they were using on these cars. I know the 21 car looked real clean and not noticing anything, but I did hear Gil Martin say yesterday that there were some areas that they thought they may have to beef up on the hoods to keep them in shape like they want to. But so far the cars I've been looking at, they look pretty normal.
And running at these speeds, obviously nearing 200 miles an hour, is one thing with a consistent air across it. When they get into those packs and it buffets, is that where you would see more of maybe some buffeting of the hoods?
Oh, sure, Rick. I mean, you'll see the cowl flaps pop open when they're, with the air goes under the car. But one of the things that distortion in the hood area particularly does is disrupts the flow to the cowl box, the air that goes into the engine. And so you want that to be the exact shape that it's supposed to be. So if it starts caving in or things moving around, it disrupts that airflow, and that can hurt performance.
We interviewed Jeff Burton earlier. He was not out on the racetrack in that pack. In fact, I think he was one of the drivers up on top of the hauler watching, waited an hour and a half in this session. He's making his first laps, but he was one of the quicker drivers this morning. In fact, Harvick, Menard, and Burton, the fastest 3, and they did it just shortly after the track opened around 9 a.m. this morning.
There's a couple of things that come to mind. You're talking about airflow of the cars.
Right.
When we started taking cars to the wind tunnel pretty regularly, we learned so many little things, like the clips that hold the windshield in place. We learned that if the bolts stuck up a little higher than what you would expect them to, that helped airflow. We learned that if the bolts across the rear of the car held the rear window in, the bigger they were, the taller they were, the more it helped airflow over the car. All those things were things that we used to do to the cars. Even the little camera, the camera box on top of the car, the puck up there, we learned that moving it around or making it a little bit bigger or just having it up there would improve airflow over the car. All those little things mounted up when you were bringing a car to Daytona.
And that's the reason, whether you run the roof cam or not, you have to run the shell, and NASCAR dictates the location because, as you said, they know moving it just a little bit can change the airflow over that car.
Yeah, and today you'd be saying, oh, you're cheating. You're cheating. NASCAR's going to bust you.
They're going to get you.
Back in the day, they just came and looked at it and said, boys, we don't like the way that looks. You're going to have to change that. Today, it's like, oh, you big cheater.
Well, right now, there's a few different teams that don't like the way their vehicles look because they were involved in the big one. We saw the 2 of Brad Keselowski, also Jeff Gordon in the 24 had issues. The 99 of Carl Edwards involved. Eric Almirola in the 43 got caught up. A lot of grass involved in the 1 of Jamie McMurray, and he has had a couple wild rides already today. Standing by with Matt.
Rick, big observation about the one car. Number one, significant damage. And I don't think I've ever seen more grass come out of a race car and continue to come out than I have of your one car.
That was a lot, wasn't it? We were commenting that we don't have that much grass in our yards at home.
Looking at this test, 2 wow moments for you today, and the second one took you out. Do you have a backup car? Is this team going home?
Yeah, we're. This is the only car that we brought down here. I think the 42 and we just brought one car, and it's tough because I think for all the organizations now, I think you're further behind than what any other year, just because of trying to get the pieces for this car, the hoods, the deck lids, the windshields, everything that goes along with that. So it's really tough for the guys that have to build the cars at the shop to this just kind of puts you behind.
Now the guys are behind you, Bono talking to the engineers and the other mechanics. They're trying to pick up what they have learned, but what about you as a driver? Have you learned enough with this package so far, 2 days down here, to feel comfortable coming back in a month?
Yeah, I did not learn as much as you'd like to. You really want to get yourself in different situations out there and see, what the car does in the draft. It just seems like the cars get a lot bigger runs than what we're used to. But it's not maybe harder to complete the pass. I don't think you're going to see any of that must have been hot. Did you see his hands? That was funny. I don't think you're going to see any of the cars tandem drafting. You can't really stay locked together and gain enough speed.
Now Montoya is staying because his car is fine. Are you going home or can you get home?
Well, I've been texting Rodney Childers because apparently they have a plane going home tonight. So that'd be really cool if I can get a ride on that. If not, I'm going to tough it out and I'll go home with the team tomorrow night.
All right, thanks, Jimmy.
Thanks.
Bob? Matt Yoakum, tell Jamie McMurray that at 4 p.m., that's when that MWR plane heads back to Statesville, North Carolina. Now, take a look at this here in the garage area. A virtual ghost town in this part of the garage area. And that's because several guys in this part of the garage on the front stretch side of the racetrack have actually wrecked their cars. Talking about Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, but others didn't wreck. They're just fearful of wrecking, and that's talking about some of the Michael Waltrip racing cars. Yes, all 3 of them, Clint Boyer, Martin Truex Jr., and Mark Martin, are going home. They said they do not want to risk wrecking their car. They said all they had planned was drafting the rest of the afternoon, and now there's no drafting left. So the only smart one in this part of the garage area, if we spin my camera, as you guys mentioned, take a look at that. 05 time right there. Jimmy Johnson, still fenders intact, single car runs, still learning down here at Daytona is Jimmy Johnson and that bunch, while the rest of this garage area in this portion of the garage, they have flown the coop and gone back home.
A little bit of a lonely garage down there for Bob.
Just another reason that Chad makes everybody mad. He's saying, look what I told you guys, look what we did.
But I did find it interesting. His teammate, Jeff Gordon's crew chief, Alan Gustafson, said this was not really a car that we planned on racing down here. It was going to be our third backup. You think about all 4 of the Hendrick drivers. They have to have 2 primaries, one for the Daytona 500 and one for the Sprint Unlimited race, which replaced the shootout on Saturday night the weekend prior. These pretty much, I think, I'd be willing to bet that's not Jimmy Johnson's 500 car or even his Sprint Unlimited car. It's probably that third backup for him, too.
Those spotters we said were air traffic controllers. Well, those air traffic controllers are pretty busy over at the airport right now getting everybody out of here.
They will also be busy. 48 making his way back out on the track. Matt Kenseth making his way back around the 2.5 mile super speedway. Daytona preseason thunder continues here on Speed from Daytona Beach, Florida. Gorgeous afternoon if you still had a car that you could put out on the racetrack to try to collect some more data. But only a few still have race cars out there, and they're going to stick around. We heard that from Dale Earnhardt Jr. earlier. Bob Dillner, we know you were lonely just a while ago, but I think you caught up with some friends.
Everybody's bailing on me, including this guy. He's trying to catch a plane back home to North Carolina. Are you afraid to go back out there or what?
Well, no, but our car's kind of bent up a little bit, so they want to take it back to the shop and fix it.
It was that bad on the rear quarter panel. I know you got a little bit of damage there.
No, it's not bad, but, it's we kind of got done with everything we wanted to, and car's in good shape. I was happy with it. Has a great speed, and it's going to be our shootout car, so they figure they go home and fix it, and I think everybody's pretty much had enough anyway.
When you were driving out there, put all of us in the driver's seat. Did you expect that to happen? What were you feeling?
Well, you never really expect it to happen, but you always know in the back of your mind that there's potential for it. Daytona, Talladega, it's just kind of the way it is. But I'll tell you, I was really happy with the way the drafting was out there. I really enjoyed it. It took me back to back when I was running nationwide and the way those cars drafted, and early in my Cup career when we had the older cars. So I thought it was really good. It didn't really help you to push a guy, but you could get right up to him, give him a good, give him some momentum, and you get runs in the leader. I passed the leader a few times, and which has been difficult to do the past few years. So I thought the drafting was great. Getting the bumpers lined up and figuring out how hard you can hit someone. When you kind of get jammed up in the middle of the pack there, that's all stuff that's going to be learned and figured out as we go. But I was really happy with the way the drafting went, the speeds, and the way the cars drove. My car drove phenomenal, had good speed. So I'm happy and ready to come back and do some racing.
Saw you changing lanes. You tried the bottom, the middle, the top, and so forth. What was the biggest thing that you learned?
The biggest thing was just how the draft was working, kind of more like it used to be. It was no two-car tandem. It was somewhat difficult to get on a guy's bumper and push him, but again, you get that little air bubble between you, and you could get a guy rolling, you get a guy moving in front of you, and get him some good momentum and make some passes. So it was cool being able to back up off the leader, get runs, take the lead, and do things like you used to do. It was a little bit more strategy involved than just holding it wide open, hitting the guy in front of you as hard as you could. So I thought it was cool. It was a lot of fun, and I think it's going to put on a great show when we come back down here.
Have fun at home.
I will. Actually, I'm not going home. I'm staying down here for a day or two. I'll do a little fishing.
Well, maybe you should come back and do some commentating with us tomorrow.
Maybe tomorrow. We'll see if I got a good fishing trip lined up.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, DW and Rick. See ya.
No, I don't think so. Greg Biffle back down the backstretch. He was one of the cars who had his hands full coming out of turn number 4 when the first pack of cars went out onto the racetrack. Looks as though Dale Earnhardt Jr. is going to be able to make his way back out on the racetrack. Again, we noticed he was involved in initiating what took place on the backstretch. He got into the back of the 9 car of Marcus Ambrose. That turned that car, and then the 88 was able to get through fairly unscathed. So they're going to go back out and do some single car runs.
But Darrell, I did find it interesting in his interview that he said he had pushed another Chevrolet, no issues. That he had actually pushed a Toyota, no issues. But that's the first time he had pushed a Ford, and he talked about that bar in the front basically just went up underneath the bumper of the 9, and I think he described it as putting him in like a wheelbarrow effect.
Yeah, you can see the 9. It just lifted him. It just looked like it almost lifted the car up, and when it did, it just hooked it dead right. So that's part of the learning experience, I guess. Probably would have liked to have learned that in a little different way, but still it is a part of the learning experience with this new car.
And that was in the middle of the straightaway, essentially where it happened.
But remember I told you, these guys tell me the cars are the lightest and the hardest to hold on to on the straightaway, because the back of the car comes up on the straightaway. In the corner, it's got the shocks and all, and it'll pull it down and hold it into the turn, into the banking. But on the straightaway, that back end's up there dancing around just a little bit, and you heard Marcus say it. He said, I hardly even felt it. But that's all it takes when you're going down that back straightaway at 200 mile an hour.
A little more insight. Let's go into the infield studio with JR, Matt, and Jeff.
Hey, what's going on? We're just catching up. Just point of clarification here on Bob's report earlier on the teams leaving. A number of teams, Jeff, had planned on leaving today anyway at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock when the garage closed. The crash has shortened that a little bit. Now, some of them were planning on staying. Junior's going to be here tomorrow. I talked to Stevie Letarte earlier today. He said, we've got a laundry list to get us through Saturday afternoon. But a number of teams were actually already planning to leave today. So you can't blame who caused the wreck. You can't blame NASCAR for wanting them to draft. A lot of these teams were going to be leaving anyway.
Yeah, and that's very true. But, in their defense also, if they had cars that were available, they would have had that option to unload it, mount the car, and put in a few extra laps. And also to what you're saying, I think also points out that the shortage of the parts have put a lot of these teams behind the 8 ball, and they're having to cut this test session a little short to get prepared to go to Charlotte next week, as well as to get back into work on their super speedway stuff as we move into 2013. So, I mean, this is just an oh, by the way, that sometimes happens during a test session. And guys, I mean, Larry and Darrell, you've been involved in this sport a long time. And what's going to be surprising is the resiliency of every one of these teams, how they rebound, what they do out of a bad situation, and how when we get back here talking about Daytona, it'll be one of those afterthoughts.
Doesn't this remind you of 1981?
Too much.
I mean, we came down here with one car because it was a complete overhaul of our fleet. The new car was a 110-inch wheelbase little Buick that we had. We only had one when we came down here the first time. Of course, we didn't get out there doing any pack drafting either. We were just trying to hang on to those cars all by ourselves. But it does reminiscent of that when we had, a tight schedule that we actually ran the old car from the year before. NASCAR allowed us to run that at Riverside, which was the opening race in. Came here with a new Speedway car. Had to be in Richmond and Rockingham and on with a very limited number of cars.
Similar situation happening in 2013. Well, we know Speedweeks is right around the corner, and the NASCAR season will be in full swing. Stay up to date and follow all the latest NASCAR news, photos, and exclusive videos. Go to speed.com, NASCAR section, or NASCAR on Speed on Facebook, and like us right now. Kevin Harvick taking the Budweiser Chevy SS around 2.5 mile super speedway as Daytona Preseason Thunder continues on speed. Well, we've talked about it numerous times. Probably one of the smartest guys in the garage is standing by with Chad Knaus. Oh, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Bob Dillner is standing by with Chad Knaus.
Very funny there, Rick. But, you guys have been calling Chad Knaus the smartest guy in the garage area. How smart do you feel right now after seeing that?
Well, let's just try to get another day and a half worth of testing done before we actually start to draw that conclusion. But, it happens down here a lot, and it's unfortunate. And that's why we avoid it. There's a lot of eager anticipation that gets built up this time of the year, and things happen. And everybody's struggling and hurting for cars and components right now, so we just didn't want to take the risk. And there's a lot of things we want to learn about the new SS and try to get it figured out so when we come back here for the Daytona 500 and the shootout in the 150s that we've got the biggest notebook we possibly can. So we wanted to make sure that we were going to run laps. And, I hated that wreck happened. It was unfortunate. Tore up a lot of great race cars and some fast ones. But it's unfortunately part of drafting.
So many people on Twitter have been saying, wow, why is the 48 car not going to be part of the draft? What can they learn? I know you're not going to give me the setup on these cars, but how much can you learn in a single car run that will apply when we come back down here?
I feel like that we've learned actually quite a bit over the course of the last day and a half, and we're continuing to learn more. We're working on making changes to the race car that we think will help or hurt the race car in the draft, and just seeing how that impacts the actual overall speed of the car. So if we can make a change to the car that we think from past experience is directionally correct as far from a handling perspective, and can quantify that with how much faster or slower it goes, then that's something we've got in our toolbox that we can pull out and say, okay, we know that this is faster, we know that this is slower, and it's going to do X to the race car.
Sounds like a physics lesson. Thanks, John.
No problem.
Matt Yoakum.
Bob, over here in the 18 team's garage here, they're doing their best imitation of Earl Scheib with their body and paint work. Off camera, we're working on the left rear quarter panel. And Dave, we talk a lot about the notes that you guys will leave Daytona with, but this is an opportunity, although you didn't really want to have this situation take place, opportunity to see how the parts and pieces survive the crash and what you may have to experience on a racing type situation.
Yeah, exactly. We came to Daytona for 3 days to learn as much as we can. We obviously didn't put this in the test plan, but it's a great learning experience. There's a lot of things on this car that's different than the older cars. The cowl flaps, the way the quarter panels are put on. So the guys are going through learning as much as they can. We'll put the 18 back together and go out and make some laps.
Judging from what you've seen as far as this car versus the old car, will it be easier to fix in the situation or basically be about the same?
I think after we work on it for a while, it'll be easier. Right now, it's more difficult because everything's new. Like the way we bolt the hood down with the hinges, that's completely new. They bent in the wreck. We didn't expect that. So, we learn things like that. We'll go back and we'll make it better at the shop. Eventually, we'll make it easier, but right now it's a little bit tougher.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Guys?
Going back to Chad Knaus, one of our bosses at Speed, Steve Craddock, and I, we were talking last night, and Steve and I are both huge University of Alabama fans, and we both had the same thought. That guy right there is the Nick Saban of NASCAR. He has a game plan, he sticks to it, and he's tenacious about what he's doing.
What color is he wearing?
Kentucky blue. I know.
So I'm just saying that is a sorry way to get an Alabama Nick Saban plug in. That's all I can say. Me and my boss were talking about Alabama. Oh, man, give me a break.
I got a boss plug in there. I got a University of Alabama plug. I covered a lot of ground there.
Oh, my goodness.
Rick.
And yet, Jimmy Johnson is still out on the road.
I have a trivia question that we're only going to let you answer. Nobody else can answer.
Now, why would you make me look even,
to some degree, you might still be considered a rookie.
Okay.
All right, Darrell Waltrip talked about Generation 4 coming about in 1981. He talked about the Riverside race where they let let teams have an option.
Different.
Bobby Allison won the Riverside race, but they elected, Rainier Racing, they elected to go with the bigger car. Who actually won the first race in Generation 4?
The very first race?
The very first race.
Would that have been the Bud Shootout?
It would have been the Bud Shootout.
Would that have been 1981?
It would have been 1981. And it would have been a man named DW.
There, I was going to say, there are a lot of clues that are pointing to the man to your right, and I would have to say DW got that first win.
But let me tell you something. I passed Benny Parsons, and if we'd had the yellow line rule, I wouldn't have won that race.
Tony Stewart still collecting information as well for his team.
Your husband set me up, and I'm gonna destroy him for it.
You're asking too many questions. You're about to see the bigger picture.
He's a dangerous man, Billy.
Time to square the debt.
The other time I'm done with you, you'll be pulling your dental records. And some wars you walk away from. I don't walk away.
I was in an accident.
Broken City, rated R, January 18th.
Sun-bleached bumpers, faded interior, foggy headlights, discolored molding.
Hi, I'm Danny, a.k.a. The Count, from the hit show Counting Cars. Here to tell you about an amazing new vehicle surface restorer called Detail Doctor. With just one application, you can restore your ride's deep, rich color. Not for days, but for up to 1 full year. You see this sun-bleached bumper? With just one coat of Detail Doctor, you can go from this to this in just seconds. We're in the business of restoring cars, but some cars only need cosmetic work. Detail Doctor helps you restore luster and shine to moldings, mirror covers, bed liners, interior dashboards, and door panels, immediately increasing your ride's value, and it only has to be applied once. Renew rubber and plastic with just one wipe. Restore your headlights instantly. Revitalize leather and vinyl to showroom condition without any oily residue. Faded body, just a touch of Detail Doctor and a light buff restores the shine every time.
We've had this bike for 10 years.
And it's definitely my favorite bike. But my saddlebag faded from the Vegas sun, so I applied Detail Doctor months ago, and it still looks new. I'm Danny the Count Coker. Restoration is my business and my passion.
Order Detail Doctor today and protect your car for 1 full year for only $14.99. But wait, call now and we'll double the size. That's enough for 2 cars. And we'll also include the Clean Hands applicator, so you can restore your car in seconds. Order now and we'll also include 2 microfiber detailing cloths and the detail brush. You get it all, a $60 value for only $14.99. Order now.
To order Detail Doctor, call 1-800-984-4814. That's 1-800-984-4814. Or go online at getdetaildoctor.com. Detail Doctor, an Idea Village product. Order now.
Tomorrow, gear up for live Monster Energy Supercross racing right here on Speed. See the world's greatest riders take flight in Phoenix. Live coverage begins tomorrow at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 Pacific, exclusively on Speed. Another gorgeous day in Daytona Beach, Florida, at the Daytona International Speedway as Daytona Preseason Thunder continues on Speed. Rick Allen, Larry McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip with you from the booth. Matt Yoakum, Bob Dillner down in the garage area, and John Roberts, Jeff Hammond, and Matt Clark in the infield studio covering this session of Preseason Thunder.
Pop, well, what are they going to do now? This is no different than if they wrecked on the first lap of Talladega. This test will go on. People will continue to find things to work on. And before the test is over with, there'll be some more cars out there running in a pack, I guarantee you.
Yeah, Hendrick Motorsports has already talked about. We've heard from Chad Canals. We've heard from Dale Earnhardt Jr. They have a laundry list of things that they still need to get done before the end of this test, and they say it's going to take us up till 5 o'clock on Saturday when this test ends to figure out exactly what we can learn from this new car. Bob.
Well, the 16 was not involved in that incident, the big one on the racetrack with 10 other race cars, but Greg Biffle, they have had to actually repair that car. This is the splitter that they took off of it, and it was actually broken or thinned out a little bit because in the draft, this team with crew chief Matt Pusha have found out that they actually traveled a little bit more with the front end of this car, so it really ground down this splitter a little bit. So they are putting on a brand new splitter on this 16 car for Greg Biffle to go out and do single car runs. And by the way, this guy right here putting on the orange tape around the bottom of that splitter, Wesley Late, it's his birthday. Big happy birthday to a member of the 16 team with Greg Biffle and the boys.
And if you notice, this car, little celebration down there, this car has that splitter, but here at Daytona, very little of it, sticks out in front of the actual nose itself. Most of it is behind the nose.
Biffle climbing back into the 16. They'll make their way back out onto the racetrack.
You know, we've had a lot of Twitter questions about the shark fins on this new car. And of course, it's a shark fin that runs up the deck lid and up the left side of the back window. This came about a few years ago, and it actually is put on there a lot to increase the liftoff speed. But the question has been, why clear? Well, what NASCAR did, and this will be everywhere, not just Daytona, because we run these fins everywhere. The reason they've made them out of clear Lexan, they still serve the same purpose, but they just felt like putting paint or fluorescent colors on those shark fins, it took away from the looks of the race cars. So I really like that we still have it. It's there for a reason, but you don't even know it until you get up this close to it.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I mean, there have even, you know, there's been some talk about a clear Lexan rear blade, a rear spoiler, because to help the drivers to get better visibility out the rear of the car. So I think
would that flex too much? I mean, the Lexan, is it as strong as?
Look how thick it is. It's about a quarter-inch thick. No, it's not going to move.
I don't think so. The windshields are Lexan, you know, so it could be done.
You see the stamped numbers on these rear spoilers and the words test only.
But that is a little bitty rear spoiler. You heard Jeff Burton talk about these cars having a lot less downforce than last year. We've been told somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 pounds, but it's not like it took 250 pounds off each end. With that little spoiler, most of the loss in downforce was in the rear of the car, Darrell.
Baby's going to be a little bit tail happy. But you know what? This is just me, and if I were playing around with the rear blade, I would just take the one they had and lay it down. Just give you option.
70 degrees now.
It's 70 now. Lay it down to. I'd go to the wind tunnel, and that way you always have the option of moving it up if you want to. Back in the day, that's what we did. We qualified at 10 degrees, which was flat.
Yeah.
But in the race, you race at about 30, 35 degrees. Whatever it took.
More downforce.
Yeah, whatever it took to make the car comfortable. So you went really fast by yourself. Then in the race, if you got a little loose or you didn't like the car in traffic, you go back there and just knock it, hit it with a hammer and raise it up a little bit and tighten the car up, and then you could go on about your business.
And what's kind of magnifying that little bitty rear spoiler is NASCAR mandates the rear spring package, and they're 100 pounds softer than what we ran last year. It means it's getting that spoiler out of the air more. Now, teams will have an option of running a little stiffer right rear spring. I would not be surprised from a standpoint of getting that right rear corner up a little bit in the race, qualify with a pair of 400s, but maybe that little stiffer right rear for the race.
Keep her nice and snug getting in the corner. It doesn't sink down quite so bad.
Still a lot of cars working their way out onto the racetrack, and the fun continues. I'm going to say the fun continues. Yeah, I think they're getting them back.
Matt Yoakum with his favorite guy.
And exclusive videos, you can go to speed.com NASCAR section or NASCAR on Speed on Facebook and like us now. Don't miss any of the testing. Daytona Preseason Thunder coverage live tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. streamed on Speed TV on speed.com. Back here at the Daytona International Speedway, we are making our way through the second afternoon session, a 4-hour session, an eventful one so far for many of the teams, and some have found themselves packing up and heading back home. Matt Clark and Jeff Hammond back here in the studio. Now, guys, we remember when the COT car was first introduced, the teams called it the car of overtime because they spent so much time working on this car, and nobody seemed very happy with it once it hit the racetrack, including the guy who won with it first, Kyle Busch. He gets out and says, I don't like it. But
after winning.
You're being so kind when you put that. You're politically correct.
Politically correct. Yeah. Well, he said something different, but that was to paraphrase Kyle Busch. But it seems like even though the guys wrecked the cars in the draft here, everybody is still happy with this thing. That this is really a tour de force. Although it's still a work in progress, it's everybody's really happy with the product as of right now.
There was a lot of pushback, Jeff, and you know this, on the COT, heels dug in, don't want it, COT, hate it, this, that, the other. I had one driver tell me yesterday, this car that we're working with now, we should have done 5 years ago. He wouldn't say it publicly, but the garage is genuinely happy, and not just because the cars look good. It's because everything surrounding this car with the greenhouse and the cockpit and the changes that they're making, there seems to be a swell of support for the car. And when guys get out of the car, like a Keselowski,
and it still has all the safety of the COT car.
That's not changed. It's better.
Yes,
they've improved it. Talked about that Thursday afternoon about as we take a look here at Danica Patrick, who's been having a pretty fast race car, at least a single car runs, but adding the Newman bar, some of the things they've done internally to make this car even safer yet for the driver. But as Matt alluded to right now, I think this is something that everybody is really welcomed. Instead of resisted, they knew that this car should be better than the one we've been racing. It's going to look better than the one that we've been racing. And I think for the first time in a long time, and I think everybody in the garage realizes that, hey, this may be our way to connect back with our fans. Also to be able to, give some support back to our manufacturers. So I think as a big lump sum, summation, it's not only a cool car, but it's one that a lot of guys have got a great attitude about, and they won't mind putting the extra hours in to get it ready for 2013.
And one of these cars that looks really good, Bob, is the number 99 because they had a backup.
That's right. Actually, it feels a little old school down here in the garage area because right now in the 99 garage stall, there are 2 race cars. And up until last year, teams were allowed to bring down as many cars as they wanted to test. We used to see a 99A, a 99B, and sometimes even a 99C test out on the racetrack during Daytona testing, but no more. 1 car in the garage area at a time as far as your primary car. But what's going on right now is this is the car that was involved in the incident for Carl Edwards. So Jimmy Fenning and the group going to work on this car. In fact, you can check out, they're making an engine change right now. They're taking the engine out of this 99 primary car, and they're going to put it in the backup car. And what Jimmy Fenning told me is he wanted to put more miles on that car and not just really use up the engine that's in this car already. Now, Jimmy also told me he didn't know what car he was going to select for the Daytona 500 or anything else for that matter. But right now, a lot of work going on down here in this 99 garage area to get this car on the racetrack here today, if they possibly can. And now Jimmy tells me he almost has a 3rd car ready in the shop. So this team, fortunate that they have ahead of as far as the production line, they're ahead of the game in having 2 cars down here and almost a 3rd one ready.
And Bob, to your point, I know Darrell Walter talked about that. That is a tribute to Jimmy Fennick. He's been down this road before. He knows he needs to be prepared. You can never have enough Speedway cars ready when it comes to Daytona. But real quick, we've had some Twitter questions from some of our fans wondering, is the 99 the only one who has a backup car at Daytona right now? I mean, we've been talking about the shortage of them. Is anybody else got one stuck in a trailer we don't know about?
From what I have been able to tell, nobody else has a backup car. And honestly, Jimmy and I were joking around about that because I said, hey, at least you were lucky enough to have a backup car. He says, yeah, but I'm also a victim because I kind of lost a car, although it's not too damaged. He has some damage to the rear tailpiece and also on the driver's side door. So really just body damage. And he told me it kind of puts them back a little bit, but they are ahead of the game as far as most of these teams in this garage area with almost 3 complete cars ready for Florida Speedweeks.
Yeah, and Bob, just to explain once again, there's a new deck lid for these cars, and new hoods. They're made out of carbon fiber. There's a company out of Rock Hill, South Carolina that's making them as fast as they can, but they just weren't too sure about these parts. Now that they're sure about them, they're making them, and it just put everybody behind the 8 ball. It was not necessarily anybody's fault. Nobody was slack. they weren't ready.
No, it takes time, and again, it goes back to NASCAR and the manufacturers developing these new cars. You know, you had to introduce it, you had to say, okay, this is what I want, and you had to go take it to the wind tunnel, and you need to take it to the racetrack. It's a process. These cars are not built just by the snap of your fingers, and that's something that NASCAR and the teams and the manufacturers know that, and it takes time to build something that's going to make everybody hopefully happy as we move into 2013.
Well, there is still so much work to go on this new Generation 6 car, but there's also plenty of work to do in this test session and on Preseason Thunder here at Daytona. We got you covered all day long, tomorrow included, here on Speed. Stay with us.
Kevin Harvick back out on the racetrack, trying to collect some more data for the 29 team as well as the entire RCR team. Still cars making their way out one by one onto the racetrack. We've seen the 48 out there quite often. The 88 has been out there. The 29 out there now.
Yeah, it'll be a little deceiving when you look at this practice sheet at the end of the day, because right now Kevin Harvick is 23rd quickest. He's run a total of 18 laps. His teammate Jeff Burton has only been out once and ran 3 laps. He's way back in 26, but these drivers were not in that draft. Austin Dillon and Paul Menard in the 33 and 27. They wasn't right in the mix of things, but they were definitely getting some help. Right now, they're 18th and 20th, but as I pointed out this morning, Harvick, Burton, and Menard, first, second, third quickest in that first practice.
I don't have anything to do with this. It's not my decision by any means. But I hope they put that car back red. A Budweiser car should be red.
Right.
I mean, that's been like history. And
sure.
I hope they put it back red.
Well, maybe the Budweiser folks are listening right now and they hear that recommendation and they'll take it to heart and put the Budweiser red back on the 29.
Miss Budweiser was red. Kenny Bernstein's drag car was red. My car was red.
Back to red.
Budweiser car is supposed to be red.
DW says back to red, Budweiser. Matt Yoakum.
And speaking of red, by the way, the Quickens driver, Ryan Newman, he was trying to sneak in. All right, Daytona 500 champion, giving me the honor of talking to a guy who's won here 18 different times. And
wrong day. The wrong days, though.
We're having all kinds of fun down here. Anyway, back talking to the People's Champion. The drafting that was taking place earlier, thinking back to the different cars you've drafted with here, leaving here because you're not going to go out in the drafting anymore, correct?
No, we, it's kind of a big year, obviously, going to this new body style, and the hard part is that some of the required parts that we have on the car aren't easily available right now. So we're having to kind of take it easy and make sure that we're that we're all right, and make sure that some of these parts we can't afford to use up. So we got a feel of what was going on there those 2 long runs, and the balance of my car was really nice. I was pretty happy with the way it drove. So we'll go back and get the data from that, and we'll spend the rest of today and half a day tomorrow just working on single car runs and seeing if we can get some more speed in these things.
You've had so many different aero packages here, from the blade that was across the roof, bigger spoilers, lower spoilers. What stands out to you about this package?
Nothing so far. I mean, to me, it's not been a drama. I mean, I heard some guys were loose. I saw that a couple of them were tight while we were out there, but our Chevy SS is pretty nice right now. I mean, it's got real good balance to it, and we got good power. So it's just a matter of just going out and just trying to find little things that'll help us when we come back. It's more, for us as drivers, once we quit draft practice, it gets pretty boring. So we've just been relaxing, waiting on. We've been wagering on what the lap times are going to be when we come around between the crew chief and I, and then we're starting second rounds of wagering with Jabbo and his changes, because they always end up about 3 times longer than what he predicts. So we're seeing if I can win enough money to pay for the guys' dinner tonight.
Are you up or down?
I actually lost $5 to Addington during the last run, so I'm currently down on that, but I'm $20 up playing pool last night against Otis, Ryan's truck driver.
A number of drivers, different techniques during the downtime inside the race car. They've got the computer looking at lap times. You have a unique process for Tony Stewart to kill the time here in the 14 car.
Well, we were running Chili Bowl this week, and my crew chief, Austin Prock, he's got me on some drag racing app. So I've been drag racing all day on my phone and trying to win some money on that to where I can upgrade my cars. So hopefully while I'm doing that, he's in Tulsa getting my car ready for the A-Main tomorrow night.
He is locked in for the A-Main, going for his third Golden Driller Trophy. Guys?
Yeah, and Tony Stewart just made the comment after hearing the numbers that he has won at this place so many different times. Yeah, but the wrong day. And I think that's evident at the top of this list. He has not won on the extremely special Sunday that is the Daytona 500.
I think it just goes again to say what we said yesterday, how hard this race is to win. Every time I say that, I'm like, well, what about Richard Petty winning it 7 times? But that's exceptional. Yeah. I'm just thinking about guys that have struggled to win this thing.
The numbers show 18 wins at this facility, and yet has never won the big one.
Yeah, and you just look back at last year. He won one of the dual qualifying races on Thursday. He won the last time we were here in July. One of those IROC wins, Daryl and I were privileged to do that race, was on the road course that the 24-hour cars run on.
And he killed. I mean, he was so much faster than that. I'll never forget him going into turn 1. You think every time he went into turn 1, the throttle stuck. But I have good news. Danica Harvick tweeted me, or tweeted the world, I guess, but I got it.
And you're looking at it.
Yeah, she said, good news, the old 2.9er Budweiser car will be red this year.
How about that?
I think they just made that decision 5 minutes ago.
it was just finalized.
I've been working with him.
Thank you, Delaney.
12 years. I think he knew it was going to be red when he said it.
I did.
Jimmy Johnson continuing to work around Daytona International Speedway. Stay with us.
The tempers overflowing, and there's a fight between Cale Yarborough and Donnie Allison.
Bobby Labonte bringing the 47 back out onto the racetrack. Daytona Preseason Thunder continuing into hour number 3 of this afternoon session. And things got pretty dicey to start off this session. We knew that they were talking about running in packs when we came out and started off the broadcast here early on. Austin Dillon coming up to speed in the 33, almost a little nudge out of Kurt Busch in that 78.
Yeah, this was a pack of about 17 to 18 drivers. Here's Jamie McMurray off turn 4. This was about 8 or 9 laps into this big pack. And,
yeah, that was a turkey walk right there. That thing just started walking with him, and he had to grab onto it like a big old turkey leg. But this right here,
Biffle wasn't just walking here. He was on a big slide coming out of turn number 4, and that ended that first pack run for that group. It got yellow after that.
We're just warming up.
We talked about close calls. Well, it got too close. The 88s of Dale Earnhardt Jr. gets into the back of the 9. Marcus Ambrose goes for a ride, collects 9 other cars in this incident. 10 cars in all. The big one happens on the backstretch at Daytona.
Yeah, both of the Penske drivers, both Richard Petty Motorsports, 2 of the Hendrick drivers. A lot of tore up machines.
And you know, one thing Rick always gets me is people at home now, they'll say, all y'all do is talk about the big one. It's always about the big one. Hello.
It always happens. You see the drivers that were involved in that big crash on the backstretch here at Daytona. And we saw the 51 of Regan Smith sliding backwards, and you saw the flap deployed on the top of that race car. And I've had a few people ask me on Twitter, is that different this year? Yes, it is. Those are bigger flaps this year than they have been in the past. And that's why it looked a little bit different when you saw that one come up.
It's all a part of that Aero package. It's all a part of your spoiler is the rear spoiler is smaller, and the fins and all those things. It's all part of that package to keep the car on the ground. That's why we're comfortable with these cars running 200 miles an hour, because they've gone through this and they know what they've got now and they know how to control it.
You know, a couple of drivers that were not on that graphic that we also learned had a little bit of damage. Martin Truex Jr., who actually Ambrose hit in the back when he got nudged ahead. He got a little bit of damage, as well as Kurt Busch in the 78 car.
Seeing the consistent laps turned for Danica Patrick in all 4 of the sessions.
Yeah, she goes out and it's within hundreds. She started off at an 85, I think it was 87. And the last couple of times out, that time she ran a 65, 46.65. That's a 193 or I'm sorry, yeah, 192.9.
You know, actually yesterday in the morning session, she was third quickest when most drivers truly were making single car runs. And then yesterday, we had 4 drivers do a little bit of drafting. So realistically, she was about third quickest in that session of drivers on single car runs. So she's had a lot of speed here all weekend.
But they just continue. I bet they've made 10 qualifying runs today.
Right.
Every time she goes on the track, it's a 2-lap qualifying run, and that's all they worked on.
22 have been involved in the pack runs that have been made here, and there have been 32 cars out on the racetrack. So 10 of the cars not involved in that pack running that had been taking place earlier. Let's go back into the garage and Bob Dillman.
Hey, we will give you a sneak peek as to what drivers do when they're not in the race cars here during Daytona testing. You see all the work going on the 17 of Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And what is he doing? Take a look over here. He's on his phone, tweeting. He's texting with people, just doing whatever he wants to do while his crew works hard on his car. Oh, wait a second. He's playing Words with Friends. Who are you playing right there?
Buddy of mine back home. I'm not very good at it.
So you're losing?
Yes, I am.
So while they do hard work, you're playing.
But I felt like I won because I made it through that wreck. So.
That's true.
Yeah, we went right through the middle. Yeah, the best of my guys are working really hard. Just running back through our run logs that we had on the way down here. We had planned on testing this whole afternoon. Obviously, that got kind of cut short. So we're back to single car runs and see if we can make this thing a little bit faster.
So did you part the Red Sea, so to speak, in that incident?
I did not part it. I went through it. I think Tony followed me right through. So yeah, that was crazy. I mean, these cars are a lot of fun to drive in the draft. I think they got less. It feels like they got less downforce total. The rear end kind of jumps around a little bit, puts a lot back into the driver's hands, and I think it's going to be an exciting Speedweeks. We're looking forward to it.
I heard Mike Kalanoff, your spotter, didn't know what to say as you were going through it. He was like, what? Low, high.
He told me good job, but the problem was before we went out, he said, hey, just so you know, a lot of these cars look the same. But he did a good job. He didn't miss us at all. So he's doing a good job up there. We'll let him stay for at least a couple weeks.
You know, you can get dictionary.com on your phone, too, and cheat a little bit in Words with Friends with your friend.
I don't like to cheat. That's why I think I lose a lot.
Well, down in Daytona, sometimes you got to cheat to go fast. You can use that as an excuse with playing Words with Friends with them.
We don't cheat. We work very hard to stay within the rule book.
It's not cheating unless you get caught, right, D-Dub?
Hey, don't throw me under the bus.
I was gonna say,
I'm the same place he is. I ain't got no comment about that.
You threw it right to DW.
Oh, look at that. We're Dr. Hammond. I just drove it.
So Stenhouse Jr. is playing Words with Friends. Danica Patrick climbs out of her race car. Daytona Preseason Thunder continuing. Welcome back. Bottom of the hour here at Daytona International Speedway. Single car runs again. After the 2 runs by numerous cars, we had some pack racing taking place early in this second session of Friday, and now it's back to single car runs as we see the 88 making his way around the racetrack. Let's go back into the garage and Matt Yoko.
Rick, day 2 of testing here for Danica Patrick and the GoTaddy 10 team. So your thoughts so far, day 2? You haven't done any of the drafting, but a lot of single car runs.
And after what we saw with those couple of runs that people did in the pack, we're happy doing single car runs. I think that there's just not a lot of parts flying around, and we need to keep everything we can. Obviously, with the test next week in Charlotte, we can't afford to lose parts. So anyway, we're getting on with it, and qualifying is going to be important. If you can qualify in the top 6 when we come back here for the race, then you're locked in. This new qualifying format's going to be interesting, and the biggest thing for me about wanting to get out there in the pack is really to just get around the guys and just get everyone comfortable with me. I know I've been out there with them, but the more I can do that, the better I feel. So, but we're gonna have plenty of testing when we come back here for the race if we don't do any running together with a bunch of cars, and I feel completely comfortable with that. It's just a matter of familiarity.
I was talking to Tony Gibson about getting accustomed to working with you with this new car, and he said that he positioned your seat. It was 13 degrees, kind of kicked up. They had to move the dash around. Small little things for you that are so important inside the race car, especially with this new Gen 6 car.
Yeah, I don't know what differences there are between the last car and this car as far as fitting me as a driver. I know that there was some issues that mechanically we came across with the gear shifter rubbing on the drivetrain, so things like that didn't go from one car to the next easily. But fit for the driver, I'm just a pain in the butt to fit in the car. Anybody who said that small drivers are a really good thing doesn't really know what small like me or small in general like 5'8", because I am a pain in the butt to fit. So the guys have to do a lot of really nice sort of handiwork in there to make me comfortable. So I appreciate that, and I feel good. And it was nice to have done those 10 races last year, so they had somewhere to start.
A lot of smiles around this garage area with all the different crew guys, and especially Tony Gibson. How has the chemistry worked so far between you two? And does he have a nickname for you yet?
It's probably what I'm putting in their drinks. No. Our car is fast, so I think anytime that the car is fast, it speaks volumes about them and what they've done over the winter, and they should be smiling and they should be happy because they brought a fast car out from the winter. And hopefully that stays the same when we get back here at the end of our next month, and we can make some progress on the 1.5 miles and short tracks next week, and that we have a good year. But it's always good to start off on the right foot.
He hasn't called you old man yet, has he? He has a tendency to do that.
I'm more of an old woman. I mean, I'm 30. I'm old. Well, I found a gray hair last night. What can I say?
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, I don't know where to go after that. Let's go back upstairs to a bunch of guys who don't have gray.
That are a lot older than 30.
Exactly. Wow. I was just thinking, I was like 14 when she was born. No, wait a minute. Oh, my gosh.
Don't do the math anymore, Matt. It'll just
like Jimmy Buffett.
Like Jimmy Buffett
says, math just is not good.
Speaking of doing math, Danica said something, and I feel compelled that we need to explain it. Now, we just got this information just a little bit ago. For tomorrow, we're going to have a graphic built. But what she said, if you come down here and in qualifying on February the 17th, you're one of the fastest 6 drivers. You will be locked in the show. The reason, we've done away with the top 35 deal. We're almost going back to where we were a number of years ago. We have qualifying on Sunday, February the 17th. It locks the front row. And then when we have the Budweiser duels the following Thursday, the top 15 drivers from each of those duels, plus also remember the front row's already locked, so now we've got 32 positions locked. And then the fastest 4 drivers get position 33 through 36, and then we're going back to the provisionals that will fill position 37 through 43rd. So that's the reason she said when qualifying's over, if you're one of the fastest 6, you know you're going to race in the Daytona 500.
Right, the front row, and then as you mentioned, the next 4 fastest are locked in. So that's where your fastest 6 are locked in, because front row gets it, the 15 from each Budweiser duel, and then the next fastest 4.
Yeah, well, you lock in on your speed.
Right.
I mean, the speed actually becomes a determining factor if you have to fall back on that.
And then we've got provisionals.
Right.
That will fill out the field.
Right.
And as always, you've got a champions provisional that's there if needed. Jeff Burton coming off the racetrack now. More Daytona preseason Thunder on Speed continues after this. A lot of activity taking place the end of January and all through February here at Daytona International Speedway. And right now, preseason Thunder continuing on Speed. Back to single car runs after earlier in the session we had some issues. The first had just a wiggle out of Biffle, and then the big one took place in the second pack run. Marcus Ambrose running second in that pack. Got turned around and collected 9 other cars. A lot of drivers that got caught up. We caught up with to hear their reaction to what took place in the big one.
It's just a domino effect. But cars were starting to get pretty aggressive and doing a little bit of pushing, and I just don't think you can do that with this car. Certainly not now.
But it looked like everybody was just doing the best they could to try to stay in that upper line and build as much speed. And I mean, right now everyone's just trying to learn, and our fast and all Ford is pretty good. Somebody, it looked like maybe Eric Almirola or Ricky, I'm not sure who got turned up there. It was a black car, but they're all black. So, and then everybody just kind of got choked up there. And we've torn up our primary now, so we'll go to the backup car, and I think we're just going to do single car runs. We've crashed, early in races. This is the earliest in an event I've ever crashed at Daytona in testing.
I saw the 43 come back across the racetrack and a hole developed, so I shot for it. And I was about ready to turn back right to stay on the pavement because I was through it. And then the 51 got me in the left rear. So we got a little bit of cosmetic damage, nothing serious. The rest of the car is fine. We'll see if the crew chief wants to stay and continue to work.
It's unfortunate for everyone, but chances were we weren't going to take this car back here anyway, so it's not a huge loss for us there. The bigger loss is we didn't get another, day and a half of testing in, but I feel like we still learned some things. We got a lot of positives out of this test, so we can go back to the shop and build some cars up and come back down here and get some trophies.
And of course, one of the cars that was not in the pack when the big one happened was the 48 of Jimmy Johnson. He continues to log the most laps. He's got 44 laps now in this session. His teammate, the next closest, at 42 laps, Dale Earnhardt Jr. But they continue to collect data.
Well, their theory is, Chaz, is if we make it fast by itself, it'll be fast when it's around other cars. And I kind of buy into that. But, they haven't had the best of luck on these speedways at Daytona and Talladega either. I'm thinking about last year right here, second lap of the race, he's in a wreck. Did that have anything to do with not getting out there and running in a pack of cars when we're down here testing or practicing? Probably not, but they have a plan and they stick to it, and I like that. They don't change their mind halfway through a test session and say, well, let's go on out and run the pack,
Yeah, their best finish last year at the 4 restrictor plate races was 17th at the Fall Talladega, where he was involved in the big wreck coming to the checkered flag.
So you could say, as a fan or just observing, that maybe they should get out there and get in a draft and see how their car is. And maybe they'd get a better finish on a restrictor plate race. You could say that.
Or maybe they'd be on the hauler right now if they were involved in that.
You could say that.
Too.
Yeah.
Let's go to the garage at Bob Dillner.
Well, here's a funny story talking about whether or not to draft. Todd Berrier is the crew chief for Kurt Busch in this 78 machine, and they were in that first draft session today during the afternoon testing here at Daytona. And when they came in, Todd got on the radio and said, okay, everybody, if anybody gets an inkling that we're going to go back out there in another draft session, I'm going to get on Kayak and book us all tickets home today. We're planning on testing tomorrow, remember. So if anybody, Kurt, any of the team members, thinks we're going to get back out there in a draft session, I'm booking us a flight home. Well, kind of sounds like Nostradamus because he predicted it right. The big one happened just like he thought, and they were sitting here in the garage area with this 78 car after that one draft session, changing back to a single car setup. So Todd Berrier may be even smarter than he looks.
I don't know about that.
Todd looks pretty smart, by the way.
Well, he looks pretty smart. But here's the thing about it. What if nobody? So what if everybody like Todd Berrier or Chad Knaus, what if everybody said, hey, I ain't going to do that? How they going to know?
Right, exactly.
Somebody's got to go do it.
That first experience can't be when the green flag drops.
No.
I mean, you're going to learn during the race, but you've got to have at least an inkling of what's going to happen to start that race.
And that's kind of NASCAR. Help us help you, or help you help us, ever how you want to look at it. But you got to do it.
Well, I think it's safe to say this young man here, Trevor Bayne, who just got engaged, I might add, the winner of the 2011 Daytona 500, I think based on the most of the rest of the day being single car runs, he will be credited with the fastest lap of this session at almost 200 miles per hour, 45.07, 199.65, and pretty much the leader of that draft earlier this afternoon.
You bring up a great point, Larry, and we've talked a little bit about it. Single car run speed versus pack speed. Trevor Bayne, the fastest car in a pack, 199 miles per hour. Single car fastest run we saw, Jeff Burton, over 194 miles an hour. There's only 5 miles an hour that separate a single car run versus a pack run. Is NASCAR saying success? We figured this thing out. We're closer as far as single car run and pack speeds now.
And that has always been one of their goals because it's had them in a box. They've had to have qualifying well on under 190 miles per hour. I'll go back to Dale Earnhardt Jr. sitting on the pole here a couple of years ago at 186.089. What was then the Budweiser shootout, Michael Waltrip locked in a lap at 209 miles per hour. So they were in a box. They couldn't make them faster for qualifying because they were so fast drafting.
Right.
What they've done with the aero package of this car has closed that gap, and I know that was a big goal of theirs.
Well, what didn't look well or didn't set well is when the Cup cars are the slowest cars at the track.
Sure.
Qualifying.
Sure.
I mean, you know, nationwide cars, trucks, I mean, these cars should have been a lot faster than those two series, and that was something else. It just didn't look good. I you know, always said that qualifying with a big plate or no plate and then put a plate on them to race, slow them down if you want to. But
this young man definitely made a name for himself after working with Jeff Gordon as far as how drafting would work. Ends up making it to victory lane and stock racing lore. The Wood brothers, number 21, back to victory lane at Daytona International Speedway. And it was young man Trevor Bayne that ends up winning it. David Pearson watched from the pit box. Welcome back. NASCAR Race Hub tonight at 6 o'clock. And that man, Matt Kenseth, will be our guest. We'll hang out with Steve Burns, Danielle Trotta. They'll talk about what took place in day 2 of testing. Remember day 1 of testing in that second session, it was the JGR guys that went out there and did a little drafting work together. It was only 3 cars, 4 cars that got together and worked a little bit. But then today, obviously, the big pack goes out, and we learned quite a bit from that one.
Well, and I think there was a bit of a method to their madness. One, I think they wanted to get a little bit of data without a huge pack. As the day came to a close, we had the 3 Joe Gibbs drivers plus Mark Martin. And then you think about it, we've not mentioned Denny Hamlin's name today because he left to go back home, right, because he and his girlfriend Jordan are expecting their first child any minute now. So Denny was only here yesterday.
Got a little bit of drafting work in.
But just look at the shape of this new car. I mean, look at the sides and the nose on the car. I mean, the way the quarters, you got flat areas up above Dollar General there, flat across back to where the trunk lid and the spoiler is. It's a beautiful automobile, particularly when you see one of them painted.
Yeah, that looks great. And that's what last night at the Fan Fest, that was the other just overwhelming theme, is how much the fans and drivers like the looks of these cars.
Well, they look like race cars. I said the COT, it served its purpose, but we kind of jumped too far ahead, I think, with that car. The safety things that we learned from that car and applied to all the cars and all the series, they were invaluable. But it was a safe car. It didn't look like a race car. And now we have both. We have safe race cars that look like race cars.
Yeah, NASCAR has implemented all of the safety issues that they have learned over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years into this car and put a race car body on it.
Daryl, as I was wandering through the garage area this morning, we keep discussing all the little things that these drivers and their teams are trying to learn on single car runs. And we know when they go out there to race that NASCAR mandates the grill opening. It has to be, no more, no less, 23 inches wide by 1 3/4 inches tall. But one thing that they are able to learn, and I talked to some of the drivers in their crews in the Ford camp this morning, is the fact of how much tape is too much tape on a single car run, because you can tape it up. I know one Ford driver told me they crossed the line where they put too much tape. Certainly helps the straightaway speed, but the water temp got so hot that the power started falling off. So they had a great lesson yesterday in what was too much tape for a 2-lap qualifying type run.
Yeah, I mean, that's something some of these cars don't run well taped up solid. Even though if they don't get hot, they don't get the right airflow. So that is a learning process. People keep asking me about the grill in the Ford. You know, what's it made out of? What's going to happen when they run into somebody? Where, you know, how's it going to hold up? And what about the fins and blah blah blah? You know, all the things that Ford grill would make you wonder about.
Yeah, here's the grill opening on the front of Austin Dillon's car right there. And again, when he races, that tape cannot be there. That opening has to be wide open, but you want to tape it up just as much as possible, because the more tape you put there, it restricts the airflow, helps the straightaway speed.
Yeah, well, most people think the grill is up here, which it is, but they take the air in down here in the bumper.
And that location is similar on all three makes as far as that grill opening. The look of where the grill is different on all the different manufacturers, but the opening into the radiator is the same spot on all three manufacturers.
Essentially, and it absolutely has to be the same size.
Right.
And you can see right here, look at this lip.
That's the Chevy SS.
Yeah, look at the lip right here. I think that's what Dale Jr. was referring to when he said, I have a bar on my bumper that hooked under the back of Marcus's car. That lip right there doesn't match up good with a Ford, apparently.
While we're doing show and tell on the noses of cars, we've had several fans on Twitter say, what are the different color dots that are on the noses? Why do some people have different colors? This is something the teams do. What we know, this team right here, they have made a total of 9 runs. Every time they make a run, they put another sticker on it, a little dot. They are taking pictures of these cars all the way around the racetrack. They know when they look at that picture, that was run number 5, run number 7, run number 8. That's the reason those dots are on there. There's no mandated color. It's whatever color you choose.
And as simple as that may seem, I'll put a dot on there to keep up with the runs. Larry knows, I know. You go back and you're talking to the crew chief, and you say, you know that run before the run when we did the, you know which run I'm talking about?
Run number 3? No, run number 4. Which one was it?
You know when we made that change, and so now you can say, you know.
Run number 3 when he didn't say a word back then about how loose it was.
That's right.
Yeah, now you tell me.
Kurt Busch headed back out on Jay.
Welcome back, everyone, to Preseason Thunder, coming to you from the Daytona International Speedway. Single car runs going on now. Dale Earnhardt Jr. has told us that himself and his team is planning to stay here until the bitter end of this test, which happens tomorrow afternoon. They still have a lot of work to do, even though it's not going to be done.
Did you say bitter? Bitter end?
Bitter end. You know, that's always, I mean, even though it's a good end because it's a long test. But you know what? There are
starting to sound like a crew chief.
Yes. There are 4 restricted, because I'm hanging out with one all day. There are 4 restrictor plate races in the NASCAR season for the Sprint Cup, and they are all very important. They're big races, but 19 races during the year are run on 1.5-mile tracks. So if you're wondering why some of these teams and some of these drivers are hurrying out of this test, we have a huge one coming up at Charlotte. And Jeff, a lot of people have been asking you the question, is this big wreck down here going to hurt those teams? But most are prepared for Charlotte with a different race car.
Yeah, we've heard, guys, whether you're talking about somebody from Hendrick Motorsports or you're talking about Tommy Baldwin, they have their Charlotte cars ready, but they understand this is valuable time that they're getting ready to lose, and they have to be ready to go to that test at Charlotte, just like we were doing here at Daytona, to try to start building that database. Once again, you've already touched on it. We're going to have 4 restrictor plate races, and the Great American Race here at Daytona is huge, but we've also got the rest of the season for a lot of these teams. They've got to get off that mark at the start of the season, like you want to. I mean, you got to go to Phoenix right after Daytona. You got Las Vegas. You got Bristol. You got going back to California. A lot of races, East Coast, West Coast, a lot of running around. Preparation is going to be so key to 2013.
Well, and the crew chiefs that I talked to yesterday, walking through the garage, yeah, hey, glad to be here. New car looks great. But they were also talking about the Charlotte test, and what they're worried about or concerned about or want to look at is how these cars will close. The closing rate, Jeff, with the new Aero package, the new bodies on the 1.5s, what these cars are going to do, how they're going to act. So they are truly looking forward to this Charlotte test, and you can speak to this as a crew chief. The pace of testing here is a tick slower. It's very methodical. It's over 3 days. You have your list. You go out, you make your runs, you cool your car down, you do all this stuff there. Charlotte testing will be totally different. And explain to the folks quickly what a thrash is, for like a testing session that at a place like Charlotte.
Well, let's try to summarize it like this. When you come to Daytona Talladega, you've already know what rear springs you're going to run, what rear spoiler angle, everything about a lot of speedway stuff, restrictor plate, it's already given to you by NASCAR. You can only run so much of an opening. You can only run so much tape during the course of the race. A lot of that is prescribed. When you get away from here, now we got an opportunity to change shocks. We can change rear springs. We can do a lot more to help the car mechanically, as well as we're going to change the rear spoiler. We're going to go back. We take this little short spoiler off. off here at Daytona, put a bigger one on when we get to Charlotte. A lot of little things that you will do underneath the rear bumper. That extra piece that we're running here in the rear of the car that try to block the air coming out, it goes away. So the teams need to go back, redefine where the aero balance is, get the mechanical grip at a place like Charlotte, and get ready to go racing.
Another totally different thing about this year, we've had that ban of testing on NASCAR-sanctioned racetracks for these big teams. They haven't been able to test. They've tested elsewhere. But this year, you are allowed 4 tests per organization. So there will be a lot more testing this year, and it's going to help with this new car.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime, and anybody will tell you, anytime you get an opportunity to get track time and get these drivers behind the wheel, get your instrumentation on there, and figure out what's going on with a race car, you're going to get better. I mean, at least you're supposed to, Matt. I mean, that's what we all live for, and that's the reason why we have an engineering group. But you, like anything else, you come up with it on a drawing board, but you got to validate it at the racetrack.
You know who's going to be the big official here with the whistle and the black and white is going to be the owner that says, okay, this driver, this team gets to go to this test. That's going to be the big issue right there.
There's Juan Pablo Montoya. Of course, that team was not happy with the results they got last year. They're used to running for championships and winning, and they weren't there.
And that's one team I'm going to be keeping an eye on because they didn't make a lot of off-season changes within the teams themselves. But they did make a big change under the hood. They opted out of Earnhardt Ganassi power plants and went to Hendrick Motorsports to get their engines this year. So they need to come out of the box and show that, hey, our drivers and our teams and our cars are good. And now we finally got what we need to get us back to victory lane.
And I did talk to Chris Heroy. He is excited about what's happening. They're not turning a small rowboat. He felt like when he got to Ganassi and what he was given, he had to turn a huge ship. And he feels like they're finally turning the corner with that massive ship, changing engine manufacturers and so forth. So he's excited about what's coming up.
And you got to believe right now that there's nobody wants to win in that garage area any worse than Juan Pablo Montoya or his teammate. I mean,
McMurray, yeah,
because they've been to victory lane.
Right. Yeah, those are 2 drivers and 2 owners that are used to running up front and used to winning. Got to take a quick break here on Preseason Thunder, but there is still so much more to come. And tomorrow you can get more live coverage on Daytona Preseason Thunder right here on Speed. The High Banks will be rocking with another 4 hours of live on-track action you can't see anywhere else. It all begins tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern on Speed. Stay with us.
Johnny Allison.
Another picturesque day in Daytona Beach, Florida, as we continue on with the second session of the second day of Preseason Thunder on Speed. Even though it's beautiful here, we know that it's not the same all the way around the country. As a matter of fact, up in the Northeast, they got hit by a snowstorm. Loudon, the New Hampshire Motor Speedway, covered with a blanket of snow, as is Michigan International Speedway, that 2-mile racetrack. Very quiet this time of the year. Indianapolis Motor Speedway also got hit with quite a few inches of snow. And one of the racetracks that will be new to the NASCAR circuit, Eldora Speedway, owned by Tony Stewart. That will be one of the stops for the Camping World Truck Series in 2013. It also got hit pretty hard with snow. Again, welcome back, Daytona Preseason Thunder. Rick Allen, Blair McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip up here in the booth. Down in the garage, we have Bob Dillner and Matt Yoakum. Matter of fact, Matt, let's head down to you now.
Rick catching up with the former Daytona 500 champion Kevin Harvick, and with RCR with the 4 cars here, they've got 2 that were working on the drafting programs earlier today, and Harvick and Burton working on single car runs. So what were you trying to achieve yesterday and today?
Conserve deck lids in case one got wrecked. No, just we got a long list of things that we need to do, and so we split it up, and Paul and obviously Austin needed to get in the draft to kind of see what he's dealing with, and we can gather that data. And we know that our Budweiser Chevy will be in the shootout, so we're going to get a kind of a whole race and practice under our belt, and this is our shootout car, so we didn't want to take too many risks with that. So we done a good job as an organization of splitting stuff up and trying to put all the pieces together and try everything, and the only way to do that was to not draft all 4 cars.
When DW was winning his championships in the Daytona 500, the window was large where you could really hit on something and have a huge gain. This window is very narrow with the Gen 6 car. So are you seeing maybe something can make a huge gain, just something very small?
Well, I think there's an opportunity here, just like when we came out with the COT car initially. I think there's an opportunity to still hit on something that really you can take advantage of, and the only way to do that is to try a lot of things. And this is great, but I think next week is the week where you really want to try to start to hit on some of those things to get that mile-and-a-half stuff going. So lots of stuff going on, lots of exciting stuff going on in our sport right now as far as the new car and the enthusiasm and excitement and just ready to have a good time.
Some guys were saying it's a challenging car to drive, but does that also make it fun? Because it's not easy. You really have to showcase your talent and why you're at this level.
Well, I think especially for those of us who have some experience, and to me this reminds me a lot of the old racetrack, the old asphalt, where you really had to work on the handling of your car and put yourself in the right position and know, not to worry about the speed too much, because you needed your car to handle in a pack and be able to maneuver your car, and that was what was going to keep you out of trouble and put you up front as you got 25, 30 laps into that run. So no, that makes guys like us feel good, because you've got that experience to lean back on. It makes you feel like you got to go out there and earn your paycheck. So that's a good thing.
You and DW are in a special club, the Bud Club, having driven Budweiser cars. I know he's very pleased that you're driving a red car this year.
Yeah, our Budweiser Chevy looks really good this year. They did a great job, and the cool thing about the whole Bud program is the packaging on the cans and the packaging that goes with the cans and the car. Everything relates from top to bottom. So the program really looks good and makes sense. And I know I like to drink Budweiser. I don't think is Daryl still here?
Yeah, he's upstairs.
I didn't hear you talk about him. I didn't know if he needed his afternoon nap or not. So.
Oh no! When you're a three-time champion, you're at Daytona and the cars are on the track.
He's pretty jacked up.
He is pretty jacked up. And I'll just give you a suggestion as I throw it back. It might be kind of cool if you have maybe a mid-'80s throwback paint scheme at some point during the year.
I got you. I hear you.
You with me?
Maybe we can get that tide ride going back again in the truck too.
Oh, combo platter I see here. Oh, I like it. I like it, DW.
He obviously doesn't watch TV. I mean, what is wrong with that boy? Am I still here? Am I taking a nap? I don't look when the racing. I'm just like he is. I'm just like these drivers are. When the season starts, I'm here, buddy. I'm here for the long haul.
We wanted to talk a little bit about the Sprint Unlimited driver lineup and how it is formed. That race going to be on Fox February 16th, really kind of kicking off Speedweeks here at Daytona.
Yeah, we went back to where we were. I think the last time that this lineup was set this way was 2008. It's the 17 drivers that sat on a pole in 2012, and then 5 drivers like Kevin Harvick that's won the Sprint Unlimited race. I like this format because if you go back to the last few years, if you had a vowel in your last name, you were pretty much in that Sprint Unlimited race.
It's the same race. It's the Bud Shootout. Yeah, it just has a new name.
And what it will have also, my understanding, 75 laps. But I know on January 21st, DW, Jeff Hammond, myself, Mike Joy, we're going to be part of an announcement about the true format of the Sprint Unlimited race.
And you won't want to miss it as we look across Lake Lloyd here at the infield of Daytona International. Welcome back as we continue to embrace social media here on Speed. During this Daytona preseason Thunder broadcast, cars making their way back out from the garage onto the racetrack. Jeff Gordon just tweeted, good test right up until the bump drafting started. Learned a lot, though. Can't wait to get back to Daytona in February.
Well, his February here last year was kind of really an act.
How about the relationship between Jeff Gordon and Clint Boyer right here at Martinsville? Clint wanted to take that spot. 200 Motorsports guys didn't want him there, and that started the feud that went all the way to the end of the year.
Big difference here. Jeff Gordon didn't take off running. I noticed that.
Then some bumping and banging continuing between those two drivers, and it got physical. Not only on the racetrack, but also in the garage. Phoenix, Jeff, Clint, and then the teams.
That's what I was talking about. Jeff didn't go running after Clint, but Clint sure did go running after Jeff.
You never forget. And even through the offseason, Clint Boyer hasn't forgot what took place in 2012.
There was some talk on Twitter that maybe you and Gordon ran into each other at New Year's Eve.
Already? This is 2013, Bob.
I know, but
I was on the damnedest boat you've ever seen in your life. I'm from Kansas. We don't have big boats in Kansas. I think he was on that same boat, but there was a lot of other people on there, and there was a big time being had. So it was, yes, he was on there, and yeah, we held hands and walked on the boat, discussed the past year, and enjoyed ourselves throughout the whole vacation. That was the one person that I definitely wanted to vacation with, Bob.
I'm going to try to help Bob out. And
this will be good.
See if you'll just clarify.
It's always the same ones.
Is the issue with you and Jeff over, or is it
Who
lingering?
cares? Really, who cares? Apparently you guys do way more than we do. I can promise you that. Thanks for the awkward question, Bob. Appreciate that.
He ends with smiles. The boat they're talking about, a yacht owned by P. Diddy that a little bit of a party was thrown on. And I say yacht, I believe the price tag over $70 million for that yacht.
Yeah, this was New Year's Eve down around St. Bart's, and I think the story definitely took some legs of its own.
Yeah.
Jeff Gordon was there, but he was on a different yacht. I'm not even sure they were on the same boat.
And it was so big that Clint probably was being accurate with saying, I'm not sure if he was on the boat or not.
But you know, Darrell said this when it happened at that incident at the Martinsville race in the spring. We know Jeff Gordon wanted to be the guy to win Hendrick Motorsports, Rick Hendrick, his 200th win, and he felt like it was taken away from him right there.
That really just kind of stayed with Jeff. He couldn't let go of that. And that seemed, you'd say, well, that was a long time ago. Well, that's kind of drivers get in that position, and you saw some other problems. And Jeff had a bad year.
Right.
He turned over here in February. He had engine trouble. He and Dale Jr. get together at Bristol, and he has teammate trouble. He had trouble all year long. It was probably the most frustrating, the worst year he's probably ever had from that perspective. So he was a frustrated guy, and he took it out on Clint in Phoenix, and then Clint took it out on him.
Well, he did his boat.
Somewhere on a boat in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the night.
Welcome back, Kurt Busch. In that Furniture Row, number 78, back out on the racetrack, Daytona International Speedway and Sprint Cup Series in their second day of testing from the Mecca of Motorsports. Again, 22 cars involved in drafting today as far as the big packs. 32 cars have made their way out onto the racetrack. 16 of Greg Biffle in our first pack run. Got his hands full coming out of turn number 4, completely sideways, was able to save it, made it back into the garage pretty much unscathed, then wasn't involved in the second pack run that took out 10 cars that were involved in that one.
You know, guys, just follow up a little bit. I was just thinking about Jeff Gordon and Clint Boyer. You know, Gordon thinks that Boyer cost him winning a 200 win for Hendrick Motorsports.
Yeah, big thing.
Big deal to that team, that company. And I think Boyer thinks that Jeff Gordon cost him winning a championship.
Also very big.
So, you know, those are two things that are kind of hard to get over. And that's probably going to linger for a while.
You know, one of the drivers involved in that big wreck was Kyle Busch. And, Matt, we're hearing that he may be trying to get out there and get a run or two in over these next 40, 45 minutes.
Got his hat on.
Helmet and Hans on. He's getting ready to climb back inside the 18 car. They've fixed the left rear quarter panel. You can see that's back on the car. A little bit of Bondo around the fuel filler neck area and duct tape covering up their repair job on that quarter panel. And he's getting ready to climb back in. But an interesting comment. Once he went through the grass, his spotter, Tony Hirschman III, gave a great description of all the damage or lack of damage to the 18 machine before he even got back to the garage area. And then Dave Rogers chimed in and said, okay, bring it back. And by the way, remember exactly what you felt from our last change. It's very, very important, not only for us, but for our entire team. So knowing that that was probably the last opportunity to get out in the draft, you know, they wanted Kyle to remember exactly what the reaction was with the race car of that significant change they made. But he's getting ready to go back out and see where they are with this 18 machine.
Well, DW, you and I were in the booth roughly a year ago when he won what was then the Budweiser Shootout. He showed with that car that aerodynamics didn't mean a whole lot.
I never saw a car wreck. It wrecked 3 times. That car was on the apron. I never saw so much fire fly from under a car. And you say, oh, he's done, he's done. No, wait a minute, here he comes. Unbelievable. Probably the most amazing drive that I've seen in a race, maybe ever.
Drove that wrecked race car right to victory lane.
Right to victory lane.
That's saying a lot. Meeting of the minds there. Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt Jr. talking about what they're feeling with the race cars on the track. A little debrief for those guys. In closing in on the final 35 minutes of this test session, the second session. We'll be back tomorrow from 9 to noon on speed.com and 1 to 5 to round out this Daytona preseason Thunder. Take another look at what was going on the racetrack when we had the packs out there.
Yeah, well, this was the first kind of go round. And remember I said how organized they were and how they were minding their manners and the gaps between the cars, and nobody was pushing anybody. And this is kind of like, let's feel this thing out and see what we got. And then they get comfortable.
Well, as comfortable as you can get.
Well, then they get to, they get to trying things. Just like Dale Jr., you tried to push, Marcus forward with his Chevrolet, and that didn't work out. And that's kind of how these things go. They escalate.
Yeah, this was in the track open for the afternoon session. Right about 1 o'clock, we immediately had about 15 to 17 drivers go out there. And for the most part, as he pointed out, it stayed organized for a little while.
Oh, yeah, this is a feeling that you go out there and you say, come back in, and the crew chief says, how'd it feel? Man, it felt great. I mean, I really like my car. It's driving good. It's handling good. Well, next time, let's go out. Let's get a little closer. You didn't get up close enough to the guys this time. Let's do a little bump drafting. Let's see what we really got. And then you get in big trouble.
And in this first group, this first time out, a lot of the drivers talked about, well, it seemed like I couldn't get up and get to the bumper of that other car, or if I would get up there, I was afraid that I would unsettle the car in front of me, make it too much of a handful, and so I decided to back off.
And that's what you can see when you watch these cars. Look at the consistent gap between each one. They're not doing that on purpose.
Right.
They just can't get that car up to the back bumper of the car in front of them without something happening to help them get there. The guy could drag the brake and get them hooked up somehow, but we're running around here wide open like you see them doing right now. That gap is there, and they can't do anything about it.
Trevor Bayne had mentioned that he was coming up on another driver and realized that he was going to make contact with that rear bumper right at the entrance to turn 3, and thought better of it, thinking, I don't want to do that. I don't want to upset that car, potentially turn it around. So got out of the gas and kept that little cushion between the vehicles.
And this is by far the biggest pack we had seen up to this point, because yesterday, right near the end of the day, we saw 4 of the Toyota drivers get out there, but immediately, no drafting this morning, but immediately when the track opened, lot from encouragement from NASCAR, these drivers got out there and started running in a bigger pack.
Trevor Bayne was the fastest in the pack runs, over 199 miles an hour.
And remember we said he never led the pack.
Right.
But when you get back in there and you have cars in front of you, and you do have enough track in front of you where you can really suck up on the guys that are running in the pack in front of you, you can turn a fast lap. We used to do it for TV, or we used to do it at the end of the day to try to get our, be at the top of the board when the session was over. You'd go out, you'd get the big pack in front of you, get back just far enough so you could run that final lap wide open, catching that lead group, and you'd run a heck of a lap.
Yeah, you look at the Ford camp alone and go back to yesterday, we only had 2 Ford drivers, I think, barely in the top 20.
Right.
I mean, Ambrose and Almirola, they were quite a ways up there, but when you look now, because of the drafting, we have 9 Fords in the top 13 as far as practice speeds.
Yeah, a couple Toyotas, four Toyotas in the top 15, and 1 Chevrolet. And we talked yesterday about single car runs. It looked as though the Chevrolets were the ones that were the dominant. Jeff Burton had turned the fastest single car lap at over 194 miles an hour, and it looked as though Chevrolet was going to be very strong here at Daytona. Then when the packs came out, those Chevrolets dropped back just a bit, and the Fords the cream rose to the top with the Fords.
And you never know why. It could be these engines are specific to a particular RPM. They know for a fact how many RPM this engine is going to turn around this racetrack. Let's say it's 8,000. That engine performs at max power when it's at 8,000. You get it in the draft, all of a sudden it's turned 8,500. Now it's above its peak. So those are things that make a car run fast by itself, but when it gets out there with other cars, the air going into the air box, we talked about that. The aerodynamics of the car. So many things change when you put the cars all out there together that all of a sudden it got really fast by itself. Not so much. Guys that weren't, here we come.
And that's why this run is so important for so many teams to gather that data. They also gathered that data in the second run where the big pack got together and ran. We did see the one of Jamie McMurray get quite a bit loose in this first run with this group coming off of turn number 4, but not nearly as loose as the 16 of Greg Biffle.
I think the way Jamie put it in his interview, what he did was child's play compared to what Greg Biffle's car did.
Again, that was earlier in this practice session. We've been seeing quite a few single car runs since. Tomorrow, get more live coverage of Daytona Preseason Thunder right here on Speed. High Banks are going to be rocking with another 4 hours of live on-track action you can see anywhere else. Begins tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on Speed. Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway. Travis Kvapil and David Rudiman sharing seat time behind the 83. And that Burger King car as he makes laps around the racetrack. Let's go back into the garage. Bob Dillner's got a special guest.
Well, a lot of work being done on Juan Pablo Montoya's number 42 down here in the garage area, but as far as JPM himself, not so much work. He's coming over here, he's checking out his iPad, he's on his phone, and what do you have for lunch here today?
I don't know. Mark brought me some carrots and some ham, and just, it's a long day.
Very healthy for you. At least you're trying to stay fit and trim. But what about this testing down here? Have you as a driver learned anything?
Well, personally as a driver, it's more of, maybe picking a little bit of a line and try a little bit a little bit here and there. But mainly when they start trying things, you got to stay consistent and just keep doing the same thing so they can learn. And you just got to be patient, But I'll tell you, I think our target Chevy's got a lot of speed, and I'm pretty encouraged how the way we're running.
Fortunately, you have a car left because a lot of people were involved in that wreck. Did you get a chance to see that wreck and tell me what you thought?
We talked about doing the draft, and Shine thought that we really needed to go through a lot of things. And he said, look, if you really need the draft, we'll do the draft. And I said, to be honest with you, we're going to run side by side, and nothing's going to happen until somebody makes a mistake on the wreck. And that's exactly what happened.
So did you make that call, or?
We decided not to go out and just stay focused on what we need to be doing. And actually it's better because before that, the line was 10 to 15 cars, so you had to stay there in the car for half hour between rounds. Now you go out there and you only have one car, so you get a lot more done now.
A little bit easier for you. Now I want you to show me this game that you're playing, because Juan Pablo Montoya's got a lot of fans on Twitter. Oh my gosh, he quadruples Rick Allen, or maybe even 100 times Rick Allen's followers. But check out this game. What is this about?
Yeah, it's like quarter-mile races, and you buy the car and you tune it. And look, let me.
You're not a rookie. Though.
He pushed
no,
rookie.
But then look. It's a nice Chevy. Come on. Well, I just got a ton of cars. I'll show you. You start the game with this, and then you keep buying cars and buying cars. I finished the game. I'm just doing little bits racing and things here and there just because I'm bored.
We want to see your race, though. Can you get into a race first and show us here?
I'll put the, let's do this, let's do that. You got to be bored to be looking at this.
well, look at that. He's got the race right there. He's in his Corvette, and he's going to do a little quarter-mile racing. But
you control the throttle, and that's it. Look.
Look at that, the little things that drivers do to stay occupied while the real workers do the work on the race cars down here in the garage area. Matt?
Absolutely. Talking about just the technology and how much you've seen it change. Bobby Labonte, you first came to, then it was called Winston Cup, now Sprint Cup in 1993. And I think at that point in time, crew chief's just had a notebook, let alone looking behind us here, probably maybe 15 computer laptops.
Yeah, exactly. And but just for, I just noticed that I have the same game that Juan's got there. That's pretty good. So I think he's got a more upgraded car than I got. But
you need to talk to somebody about that, though.
I know, I'll work on that. But yeah, obviously, you know, like, you know, you mentioned too, it's a lot of computers nowadays, and you know, you find it half a tenth of a second here and half a tenth of a second there. So you know, you're in pretty much in a box with the body, so you work on things everywhere else. You can try to make things happen. Definitely the computers help, but it's just part of the process.
You go back to a year ago, Speedweeks of 2012, and where we are now, a lot of changes personnel-wise to your organization. Where do you feel you guys sit coming into this Speedweeks?
Well, I do believe that we're further ahead, obviously. We didn't even come to the test last year. We didn't even have a transporter this time of last year. So everybody's worked real hard over the wintertime. You know, we built, last year was just basically getting ready again for this year. And, you know, Bobby and Brian and all the guys have really done a great job. And, you know, put a lot of people in the shop, and the cars are sitting there, you know, getting ready to put bodies on when the rules are finalized, I guess. We already tested Charlotte. We're here this time, and we're going to be at Charlotte again next Thursday and Friday. So a lot of things like that are really, really good. You know, a lot of great people there, and you know, just putting organization with everybody that's there to get us further ahead.
Now, if we were going to get a video game for old 3-time up in the booth, what do you think we should get for his iPad so he can, you know, have something to, you know, waiting for his flight, waiting for the next practice session to play as far as a video game?
I don't know. I'd say a fishing game or something. I don't know if it's a racing game. Maybe you should get a fishing game.
I don't know, DW. Would you rather have a racing game or a fishing game?
I would rather have a racing game. I don't fish.
He would rather have a racing game. He doesn't fish.
I don't fish. I don't hunt. I'm still very capable of playing games on a computer.
I just wish we could get a kitchen pass from the lovely Mrs. Waltrip to get you out in a truck at Martinsville maybe one more time.
I would take it. I'll celebrate my birthday.
And on that note, I just want to clarify. Juan Pablo Montoya has 680,000 followers. I have 10,000. Yeah, Robin Pemberton's on the other side of the break. He'll talk with JR.
Welcome back, everyone, to Preseason Thunder here on Speed. This second session of the day is slowly winding down as we have some cars still out on the racetrack. Almost 14 hours of testing so far here at Daytona. We want to welcome in Vice President of Competition for NASCAR, Robin Pemberton. Robin, just your initial thoughts so far after seeing all these hours of testing, a little bit of drafting. What are your initial thoughts?
Good so far. I mean, it's obvious that the car's a little bit different to drive. We're learning that package and what the air does around the car. You know, we learned that the roof flaps are doing their job. You know, we've redesigned a lot of that stuff. Daniel Honeycutt and the group back at R&D Center have worked real hard on that for well over a year to do an upgrade to that. And, you know, you test for a lot of things, and today we got a roof flap test in, too.
Well, you also had an opportunity, and I got to ask the question, going in the back straightaway prior to the what happened over there, and then afterwards. I know we saw Mike Helton, you and John Darby, you know, as a group afterwards. You know, I saw you in there with your hands making some gestures about what went on the back straightaway. So, you know, what was the discussion after the crash?
Well, you look at things. Guys are going to figure out the fastest way to run the track, and they want to figure out if they can push and draft or whatever. And it looked to me like there was a move back there by the 9 to come down and maybe go back up, and the 88 got in a little bit. And so that's just part of testing. I mean, you can come down here for years at a time and never have anything like that, and then you come down here and you know, those things happen. You know, they just happen. So it's just a racing deal, and it happened in a straight line. So.
Did the cars perform after the crash, post-crash? Did some of the parts perform like you expected? And are there any changes you'll make based on what we saw happen today?
We'll get back. We've taken pictures and measured things up, but everything looked pretty good. You know, as you know, some of the deck lids here are prototypes and test pieces, and some were the real thing. But everything that we looked at that we had produced or mandated looked like it did its job for sure.
Robin, you guys have tried to go to the competitors over the years and see what they think of these things. What's the feedback you're getting back from the competitors right now, and how closely did you talk with them after that wreck?
A few of them that came up. Others were busy, but you know, you'll always have that third, happy, don't matter, and sad, right? So, yeah. But for the most part, it's like, let us work on the cars. We've got to get them driving better. They run great by themselves. The draft is where you can't push anymore, as much, and they like it. For the most part, it's going just according to plan, knock on wood, and we'll have to wait and see. It's a 2.5-year project, and we've got 14 hours of testing in on it with all the real competitors, and I think it's going probably above average right now.
You brought up the 14 hours you've already got, but you've already got another test planned next week in Charlotte. Testing this year freed up a little bit. We got 4 tests that the teams can take or do themselves. So, kind of like, what are you looking for next week in Charlotte, and then what do you expect from that point on?
What we're looking for is just the guys to finally, the rules package is finalized, and the cars got some pretty good grip built into them, and just for those guys to build their cars and get ready to go run. I think they're going to be happy with what they have, and they'll work on it from there.
All right, everybody's happy, seems like. But will you make any changes for tomorrow?
No.
Nothing?
No, we're in pretty good shape. No, we really are. When we were down here last year, remember, we made a restrictor plate change, but we also changed the cooling inlets. We moved the bumpers down lower to try to, head off that push draft, and we were running around at 206 miles an hour.
The happiest people now? The ECU folks and the cooling folks.
Yeah, because they're not talking about that.
Exactly.
Yeah. What about, again, a lot of fans, because of what happened, several drivers made a comment about, well, the car was too loose in the back end.
Yeah.
If NASCAR was going to look at a possible way of tightening this car up, would they go to the rear spoiler first, or if you got a better idea, would you change something else?
Well, the thing you have to look at, they wrecked in a straightaway.
Oh, yeah. They ran over each other.
They ran over each other. So, and it just takes time. I mean, we go through this transition, and, for the 55, we're coming to 55 years at Daytona, right? We only push drafted for about 18 months of the 55 years, right? And we're getting back away from it. You just gotta say, put that away. And maybe when a car comes out 5 or 6 years from now, maybe we can do it again. But, we'll be there to say, I told you so.
I look at it like this, and you've been around a long time. Sometimes you have to retrain the guy behind the wheel.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is these guys are so good. I mean, they'll find a way around it. I remember that day at Talladega when Denny Hamlin, it might have been Rudiman, it could have been somebody. All of a sudden, this thing happens with 2 cars hook up, and they mowed the field down. I mean, they killed them. And it was like, there's just something that happened that day, but everybody got to practicing on it, and then all of a sudden that was the norm, and it wasn't a very good norm for us,
Hey, Robin, we know you're really busy throughout this test. We really appreciate your time and the information. This is at least one thing we know everybody agrees on. These cars really look good, and everybody's really happy about that, and that's rare.
Yep, it is rare, and it's going good, and we'll continue to make things better as we go along, and looking forward to Charlotte. I think people are going to be pretty darn happy when they get there with the cars that they have to work on.
All right, Robin, we appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
We got to take another quick break here on Preseason Thunder from Daytona. When we come back, we'll check out who is still on the racetrack, send it back up to the broadcast booth as we wrap up session number 4 of 6 here at Daytona.
Welcome back. Daytona International Speedway, Daytona Preseason Thunder winding down the second afternoon session as we see Dale Earnhardt Jr. bring that National Guard Chevy SS back onto pit road and into the garage. Just over an hour, NASCAR Race Hub will break down the first 2 days of testing here. Matt Kenseth, Jeff Burton are going to join Larry Mack, Steve Burns, Daniel Trotta as they'll talk about what took place not only today but also what we might be able to expect tomorrow. Get the insight from Kenseth and Burton as to what they've been feeling of this new Generation 6 race car.
Hey, Larry, with about 5 minutes to go in practice, what do you start thinking?
With being day 2 of day 3, probably can I get one more run in? Just one more run.
It's always like you've been here for day 2, been 12 hours, whatever we've been, and it's always run down to the NASCAR trailer and ask if they're going to extend practice or not. They had that show, we had to cut down our practice there because of the cleaning up the wreck. Are they going to extend? I got to get one more run in, and that'll be tomorrow afternoon at 5 o'clock too.
We're already into, this is the 14th hour of testing. We had 7 hours yesterday. This is hour 7 today. There'll be 7 more hours tomorrow, and we've already heard that Chad Canales, who that team has been on the racetrack more than anyone. They've got 127 total laps that they have turned, but they said that they've got a list of things that they want to continue to do all the way up until 5 o'clock tomorrow, as has Dale Earnhardt Jr. and that team. So they're going to stick around, and we know that the 10 of Danica Patrick, they're back tomorrow morning for sure. So a lot of testing still to take place. Let's go back into the garage and Bob Dillman.
And fortunately for Carl Edwards, he did have that backup car. Jimmy Fenning thinking ahead, and they will get back on track tomorrow. They won't make it today, but they did something else pretty smart. Behind me is Marcus Ambrose's rig. We know that Roush Fenway and Richard Petty Motorsports have an association together. Well, what they have done, because there was room in that 9-hauler for another car, they sent the wrecked 99 home. It's going to go home tonight and already be worked on tomorrow to try to get repaired for when we come back down here for Florida Speedweeks in February. Matt Yoakum.
And Bob, on the other side of the garage here, you're catching up with Austin Dillon. Now you're done for the day. You made 2 runs in the draft. And what was the first run like compared to the second?
You know, the first run we got out there, the car was a little loose, and we adjusted on that. And really was fast the first run. I could suck up whenever I needed to, and learned a lot, and feel like we were having some fun, and then all went bad on the backstretch over there. And that was a bummer for all those guys that lost cars, and now we'll just go back to single car runs.
When you go back to the hotel tonight, you start digesting what took place today. What's the biggest thing that's going to stand out to you about what you learned about drafting and driving a Sprint Cup car?
You know, mostly learning about the horsepower and then that small spoiler in the back. I can't whip the Cup car as much as I could, like my Nationwide car from lane to lane. Just a little bit slower turning down into the pockets that you get there, and just trying to talk to some of these guys that have been doing it a lot, and we'll have a lot of practice coming up when we come back in February.
Now, a lot of guys I've noticed during the testing, a lot of beard growth. You seem pretty clean shaven today.
Well, I had one yesterday, and I shaved it off last night for the Daytona speed deal that we did here, and now it feels pretty nice that it's been so hot all day.
We had a lot of money betted that Pop basically laid down the law that you needed to bring out the razor.
Needed to bring out the razor. Yeah, that's probably about right. But I might grow a good one. It's getting hot already, so especially down here in Daytona, it's nice to have I might even shave my head tomorrow. You never know.
Okay, don't go that far, okay? All right, let's go back upstairs, guys.
I would say that we could probably raise enough money for a charity of some sort if he would commit to shaving his head.
You know, real quick, I want to talk about this rear spoiler while we're looking at the back of his car. That is only 4 inches tall and 53 inches wide, and it's 70 degrees. Matt Clark asked Robin Pemberton, are you looking at maybe changing rear spoiler? We actually had Jeff Burton say we wish we had a little more, because the smaller that spoiler is, the less grip those rear tires have. The one thing I do want to clear up, we've been talking about the Charlotte test next Thursday and Friday. The car for those racetracks, not Daytona and Talladega, will have a much bigger rear spoiler. So those cars will have a lot more downforce than the cars like they race here and at Talladega.
Larry, over there in the test a few weeks ago, Casey Kane ran a lap in I think it was 27.87 or something like that. It was under the current track record.
Yep.
That's how fast this car was over there a couple weeks ago.
And how do you do that? With downforce.
With downforce. That's almost running that racetrack wide open.
Had a lot of grip at Charlotte. And they're going back there next weekend. But we've still got 2 minutes this test session. Stay with us.
Empty garage.
Nice.
Welcome back. Jeff Burton currently on the racetrack, and we're getting quite a few more cars lining up wanting to get out onto the racetrack as the minutes wind down. Let's go back into the garage and Bob Dillner.
Well, Jimmy Johnson, the Lone Ranger in this end of the garage area. He's the only one left here, but you're trying to accomplish a certain mission down here. Without drafting, what is that mission?
Well, we have a long list of things that we want to work through and make sure that we kind of ABA every change and validate and verify what works and doesn't work. So when we come back, we have everything on the car. You know, it's such limited practice when you come back for qualifying, and it's so important that you know, we want to be systematic and understand exactly what works and doesn't work. You know, I would love to draft. I hate sitting in these long lines waiting to get on the track, and now the line's awfully small, so at least there was some reps taking place here, you know, the second half of the day. But You know, we've come down and have been a part of drafting practice and have crash cars at the Speedweeks, crash cars at the test, and it just gets you behind. You know, as much as the fans probably don't like it, I'm more concerned about, you know, all the men and women at Hendrick Motorsports and how hard they would have to work to get cars ready. And hopefully nothing goofy happens tomorrow and we take this car home and don't have to do anything to it and can bring it back as a backup car.
With this new car in single car formation down here, what have you guys come out of after 2 days of testing?
We're not trying real hard. We've been making 3-lap runs, 3 time laps, really 4 laps, and just systematically going through all the changes we want to and just trying to, you know, find out what works and doesn't. So it hasn't been all that eventful for me. We've been low on the speed charts, but, you know, Chad's not concerned, and we've been here before. We know when we come back how to just, you know, get the car fast, put tape on it, and all the stuff that you have to do to pick up some speed. So right now we're just kind of going through the motions and learning. We have 2 new engineers that we're trying to bring into the system. We've got a mechanic that's new, and just trying to get everybody to gel and then knock the rust off the veterans and just kind of get back to the track and get going. It's been a, you know, quiet couple months.
I like what Jimmy Johnson said about this open space in the garage area here tomorrow, guys. He said we should set up a bunch of ping pong tables and have a ping pong tournament while the guys are waiting for crew members to make changes on their cars.
That's exactly what we need to do. Have you guys do ping pong down there?
No, you need to be cornhole in there.
Cornhole.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Yeah.
You know, right now he mentioned that they're not very high on the speed charts. 29th out of 32 cars that have been on the racetrack, but have well over 3 times as many laps as everyone else.
But we predicted it earlier when we saw that car in the garage area, that will not be a car that hopefully in their eyes ever hits the asphalt here at Daytona for Speedweeks. He's run over 100 laps in the 2 days, and everything they learn, even though the box is small, they will go back and incorporate it in the true Daytona 500 car and the car they run in the Sprint Unlimited.
It just looks like about a 46-60 is where the single car runs are right now. 60, 62, 65. That's Burton, Patrick, and actually Kenseth.
Yeah, right around 193 miles an hour. As we look at the top speeds from this second session, Trevor Bayne the fastest, over 199 miles an hour. Continuing on back down through this list, we talked about 22 drivers went out there and ran in packs at one time or another.
Yeah, every driver you see here, all the way back to, well, roughly Jeff Gordon. That's been all in drafting. Kevin Harvick, without that 193.150, that's roughly where the single car run starts.
Well, I think we learned something today, didn't we, guys?
Yeah, and guess what? We're going to learn some more tomorrow. We're going to be right back here tomorrow afternoon.
We're back here at 1 o'clock. Make sure to join us for live coverage of the final 4 hours of Daytona Preseason Thunder. Thanks for joining us.